All right, we are live. It looks like we have a delivery coming in. Welcome everyone to the 2024 first annual Bitcoin peer-to-peer street festival. Thank you all for coming. Round of applause for everyone here. Thank you guys, our loyal fans here. Thank you so much. This is the first ever Bitcoin Street Festival hosted by the Santa Monica Bitcoin office, powered by Proof of Workforce. I'm with an amazing lineup to help get us started with none other than the vice mayor and sponsor of the Bitcoin office in Santa Monica, Lana Negretti. I have Lisa Huff, who's a board member on Proof of Workforce and just an all-around talent in every area. And I have Max Granowska, also on the board of Proof of Workforce. Also, speakers on the July 9th City Council meeting that led to the approval of the Santa Monica Bitcoin office, which is the first municipal Bitcoin office in the United States. Welcome, y'all. We're here. Oh my God. We made it. Like, I didn't think we'd get it together. Huge shout out to Lana because...
Huge shout out to Lana.
Yeah, she's also an event planner in addition to a city council member. How are y'all doing? And these are Bitcoin bobas from Mom on out.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Cheers, y'all.
months ago when we spoke in front of City Hall, we were like, we had no concept that you could go around to all the tourism signs of Santa Monica and there's a Bitcoin office symbol you can click and get information on. Look at this festival. Like, Dom has made so much happen, and Lana, like, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. People have no idea, and I'm just so happy to be here and help contribute to, bring Bitcoin to Santa Monica.
And Dom, thank you for building this desk. I feel like a very official Bitcoin Magazine conference news desk. Thank you.
It's wind powered.
We tried to get the marathon desk, but that thing is solid steel, and I think it costs thousands of dollars to ship. So we built our own replica of the mining desk from scratch. Where's Garrett? I had some heavy helpers because my carpentry is not up to par at this level. So here we are. We have it. There's tons of stuff going on, and I don't know. I think it's great to kind of kick off, Lana. Like, what do you think the meaning of this is and the value of having this street festival here on the 1200 blocks of the 3rd Street Promenade?
Well, first of all, welcome everybody to Santa Monica if you're not from here. And for those of you that are, thank you for coming and supporting. I really do think that this is a moment in history. This is the first Bitcoin office in the United States, and it all started with a little trip to El Salvador. So I'm super excited. This is about education. This is about innovation. This block of the promenade has been needing a lot of TLC. And so having you all here adorn the 1200 block, support the local businesses, learn a little bit more about blockchain technology, about Bitcoin. This is what it's all about. It's about community and innovation. So super excited to be on this endeavor alongside the community, and grateful to everybody up here who helped put it together.
For sure. And Lisa, I know, you and Mags were so pivotal in speaking at the city council meeting. Again, it's really hard to get something like this passed. It's a no-cost initiative, so it costs the city and taxpayers $0. And again, this wouldn't be possible without the Bitcoin community. That you give the Bitcoin community an opportunity to show up, and they show up. Like, look at this, it's unbelievable. There's no budget here. This is just Bitcoiners who are passionate about what they're doing. But Lisa, explain the night that we spoke, if you could, and just like what your thoughts are on us being here now.
Well, I think that was my first city council meeting ever, and it was amazing to fly here from Texas and stand in front of Lana and her colleagues at the city council. We were there for quite a while. I remember we left and went out for some very heavy espressos sort of midway. But Lana, I think it was almost midnight. Maybe it was 10. I think maybe it was like what? It's like 10:30, and we were able to present in front of you and your colleagues. And then it was 12:30 or something, 1 o'clock in the morning, when they passed this initiative. They gave us permission. But what I really noticed that night was how many of the residents in Santa Monica were there. In particular, there was this man sitting right behind us that was like not going to have any of our Bitcoin, kind of shenanigans. And then we spoke, and he said to us when we kind of came back to our seats, he was like, well done, really well done. Like, in that moment, we changed that man's opinion of Bitcoin. And so I'm so grateful to be here today and just, have you join this community, because once you're sort of infected with this Bitcoin virus, you realize this is the way for humanity. This is the way for our kids. Like, we can take back our self-sovereignty around money, but also responsibility. You see all of the cool kids games and stuff that are here. It just puts responsibility back on each of us, and responsibility is good. So I'm so grateful that you invited me to come for the city council meeting, and that it's led to this.
Wow, unreal. Well, I want to lay out.
Right?
Yeah, unbelievable. I want to give a quick layout for the folks of what's happening on the block, and we can, tie in. But we have Bitcoin cornhole down at the boba shop. Y'all saw there's a Bitcoin boba.
These are really
today.
good.
They're doing a special drink. It is delicious. Going on right in there, the pickleball court is a tournament with over $5,000 of Bitcoin for different tournament prize winners provided by Fold. So that's happening. We have the UCLA. Where's the UCLA USC student? Where are you guys at? Hey, nothing can bring UCLA and USC together except for Bitcoin. Just know that. They're next to each other at the tables, and it wasn't even an issue when we brought it up. They said, okay, fine, for Bitcoin, we'll come together, we'll do this. So we have authors, there's all kinds of games. Behind me, DJ Paper. If you haven't gone to the Aguas Locas Bitcoin non-alcoholic beer garden, you can buy and try a transaction in Bitcoin if you've never done that. So really easy. You go there, get a non-alcoholic drink. You can sit down, relax a little bit, and I encourage everyone to go check that out. And then we have the meetups, different meetup communities behind us. But I mean,
DJ Paper.
There's Bitcoin is art, and there's so much going on. What do y'all think about, what's some of your favorite stuff happening?
I have to say DJ Paper is one of my favorite things at the end of the block there. It's setting the tunes and the vibe, but more importantly, I think bringing the community together from the education space with the colleges and the local businesses here. This is what this is all about. We're all coming here to support each other. And I just want to note that every new technology, every new endeavor has had its moment in time and history of resistance and its opportunity for growth, and that's what we're here for today. So I do feel still like this is really a moment in history.
And I think one of the key things that we're seeing is Bitcoin is bringing economic development to places that have had it, declining, whether it's small towns that used to have anchor companies like pulp and paper mills, that when that company left, a Bitcoin mining company comes in and brings jobs, or something like this, which is very different, but also, Bitcoin brings innovation and a whole community of different types of companies, whether it's energy companies, whether it's startup companies, fintech companies, to a space. And once you start to create that ecosystem, more come in, and it strengthens sort of that community. So I'm glad we're kind of bringing it here, bringing life to the promenade. So super excited to see how it helps. Bitcoin has helped, how it helps, brings hope to all these little parts of the world.
Well, we know Bitcoin's resilient, right? Because the media has declared Bitcoin dead. Who here has heard in some media outlet that Bitcoin is dead? It's over. Yes, hands, right? If y'all could turn the camera, you'd see tons of hands. And yet Bitcoin continues to gain adoption, and the network grows stronger every day. So it makes sense that Bitcoiners are also resilient. And when it comes to economic redevelopment and revitalization, you have some challenges here, right? With how are we going to use, Pickle Pop is using what once was a big box retail clothing store to do something different, but you need resilient people to rebuild and shape what things are going to look like. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely a different market. I am a brick and mortar retail owner, and I can tell you that the way consumers shop are totally different, right? They're looking for experiences. What drives people? They do want community, they want in person, but it needs to be experiential. And so, for example, if we ever get to a point where retailers can easily adopt Bitcoin as a payment source, that will bring people from all over the world down to our promenade, our downtown area to shop. And that's really what we want to do, is put ourselves on the map. We have been for years as a beautiful beach city. Tourists love us, but we are suffering just like many areas in the nation in terms of brick and mortar retail. So thinking of new ideas to get people to come in and shop in person and build that community space, this is it. I also think it builds an opportunity for the conversation around financial literacy, right? Speaking of college, I have 2 teenagers. One's going to go off to college soon, and these are conversations that they are having at the high school level. And I, as a 45-year-old woman, are oftentimes learning from my daughter about digital assets and this space. And I think it opens up the door to just have that financial literacy conversation with our young people.
Lisa and Max, you guys have been doing Bitcoin education for some time. Can you speak on how Bitcoin serves as a tool for financial literacy and what you've experienced in teaching people about Bitcoin for even financial literacy beyond Bitcoin?
You want to go first?
I think one of the simplest things is if you give somebody a little bit of Bitcoin, right, they become now vested. It's the best way to kind of learn, because other than that, maybe you hear about it, but now that you actually own, even if it's a tiny bit, you're like, what is this? What do I want? You know, like, what does it mean? And a lot of times, because Bitcoin is a very new asset class, right? The adoption is growing. So we've had, the price slowly ticking up. And when people see that the price goes up, they're almost become forced to hold. And that is, in a way, a savings technology, right? Yes, it does go up and down, but it teaches you, if you're like, well, if, this year Bitcoin was 20,000 and like 2 years from now it's 60,000, I was much better off holding on to it because our regular fiat money is being inflated away. So I think like we've become as a society very much like spending focused, and also because money, doesn't retain as much value. So you want I want to buy things as quickly as possible because I don't know if it'll be worth as much more. Whereas this really incents the savings as opposed to a debt-based society. So I think that's sort of, when you're educating people, that's part of that story, because we hear about, unaffordability, and these aren't very comfortable topics, but, you're flipping it around as a more positive, as a savings technology. So that's sort of one element. But when it comes to like this, before I became a Bitcoiner, I had no idea about all these other things. Like there's the economics elements, there's the energy system elements, there's just so much that goes into Bitcoin, financial system, central planning. So it kind of forces you to go into all these different topics, and you become a much better, well-rounded person. And then also, because when you try to educate somebody else and you realize that you have knowledge gaps, it forces you to learn more. So it's a very good thing. It's a powerful system.
Definitely. Well, Dom, I think the greatest thing about educating someone on Bitcoin is that probably in 10 years, this will just be normal. This will not be let me tell you how our money is broken, right? I mean, the guys from the colleges that are here, the number of clubs on college campuses, there's no need to really talk about how fiat is a complete fiasco, right? Like, we all know that, and we talk about it because I think we're trying to make it relevant to the TradFi group or maybe the older investor. Fine, but like Charlotte out there, the 5-year-old and the kids at college, like this is just normal. This is how they transact every day. They use digital payment systems. Your vendors here on this street and all throughout Santa Monica are just going to start transacting in Bitcoin like they do in Madeira, Costa Rica, El Salvador, right? There are so many communities around the world, Ghana, where you can go and only spend Bitcoin. I mean, I was gone last year, I don't know how many weeks of the year to these places. I never interacted with the fiat system. It's brilliant, and it's brilliant for your community because being the first in the US is like, it should be, you all should be transformative. You're California. You are where tech innovation is born, of course, because who doesn't feel inspired when they're here?
There's another aspect to it from an employee retention. Right now, it's really hard to retain employees and even to find qualified employees. And one of the things I've been thinking of as a small business employer, in order to be competitive in the market, you know, possibly offering Bitcoin as an incentive to attract innovative employees. So there's just so many avenues that we see a benefit as to our economic diversity in Santa Monica, giving small businesses a real chance at penetrating the market. But there's just so much to learn, and I'm actually excited to visit these booths this afternoon because I'm seeing some games going on down there. And Dom, I don't know if you mentioned cornhole. What's happening all the way at the end?
Yes, Lightning Educator D++ has a cornhole game where when you throw the bag into the cornhole board, when you score a point, you have Bitcoin gets deposited into your wallet immediately, instantly, and you can see it on the screen. So for those that say, oh, Bitcoin is too slow, you can literally have transactions in real time in a game like Cornhole where you're earning micro amounts of Bitcoin immediately and it's visible. So I encourage everyone to check that out. It's a great way to learn about Bitcoin. I wanted to talk about the initiatives of the Bitcoin office very briefly. A lot of people always ask, the most common question we get is, where is the Bitcoin office I'd like to visit? And we don't have a physical location.
Well, today it's right here.
Yeah, we're right here today. I always say wherever our shoes are, that's where the Bitcoin office is. But we have 4 initiatives for the city. Number 1, provide education for residents, community members, visitors. Number 2, coordinate and cultivate relationships with builders in Bitcoin to assist with economic revitalization. You know, on a Friday at 1, what does this usually look like here on the promenade? There's the people, downtown Santa Monica has been doing a great job, but you know, we need more people to activate and help out and fill the days, so that's huge. We have remote career opportunities because a lot of people in Santa Monica may not realize that you can get a great job in Bitcoin and stay here in Santa Monica and live and work remotely. And the last is identifying the potential for stranded renewable energy generated by the city to potentially mine Bitcoin as an exploratory way to find out, like, would this be beneficial to the city? So if you can imagine a facility like an employee facility that has solar on the roof, well, when those workers aren't in the office, that solar is just lost. So there's all these panels on a building that goes unused. And so if there was a way to use renewable energy to mine Bitcoin, it'd be a good learning experience for future projects. So those are the 4 initiatives. Any thoughts on those?
Well, Lana, I'm curious, are you all talking about holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or is that a talking point that you want to add later?
Maybe later on. At this point, it is purely education. Yeah. I have to tell you, there's just so much hesitation, even in 2024, into even just exploring anything that people don't understand.
Yes.
And so really, this is just driving that. Like, how am I going to, the ability to be a bit fearless and open-minded and just learn about something we don't understand, and then we will take it the next step and the next step. So for right now, we're just in the education phase, but hopefully that will be a topic sometime in the near future, far future, we don't know.
That's so good. Good times, let's go.
Well, what do you guys think is up? You know, what's other than the 4 initiatives, what do you see as being the future for municipal Bitcoin offices? And I will just say one thing on the balance sheet. It's actually the state charter that is very restrictive of cities holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So a lot of it has to change at the state level because the state only allows cities to hold like bonds and certain things. But what do you all see as the future? Something like that alone, even if those laws could be, you know, updated to reflect the future financial environment that we're in now, what do you guys see as the future for Bitcoin offices citywide and throughout the country?
Okay, well look, I just want to go out on a limb here and say that when Larry Fink made the call that BlackRock would have an ETF, I am telling you there are people in offices right now who are redoing what pension investment guidelines look like. They have to. You cannot have BlackRock and all these financial institutions in an instrument that is unavailable to the masses that are in pensions, unions, right? All of these sort of government adjacent organizations, you will have Bitcoin on every balance sheet, and it will probably become a mandate that you do, much in the way that, you know, it was mandated that they hold a certain percent of cash or bonds or whatever it is. There are people in boardrooms, I'm sure, right now.
Well, at some point, right, you know, cities, institutions, they have to take Bitcoin seriously. I mean, they didn't take it serious when it was worth zero, when it first started. It wasn't taken seriously at, you know, $1 million. It wasn't, you know, taken seriously at 10, 100, 500, $1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion. Now $1.4 trillion global asset. And so this thing is held by people all over the world. And I think the days of just saying, it's okay to say, I don't want to do Bitcoin, I don't like it, but to say, I'm not interested, I'm not going to look into it, I don't know, that seems like it's in our rearview mirror.
Like, we're at the stage where sovereign nations are holding Bitcoin, like El Salvador. Sovereign nations like Bhutan and El Salvador are mining Bitcoin themselves, or sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East are mining Bitcoin. So we've progressed quite far. So there's like sort of that element of holding, right? And it will be the early movers that sort of get started. But then there's also like the local community level where I'm seeing these wonderful communities like creating their own ecosystems where they have farmers markets and they, you know, sell and buy wares in Bitcoin. And we have the community meetups that are becoming bigger and bigger and you know, spread out across North America, but also all like we're very North American focused because of where we live, but we're also not seeing the levels of like inflation that you get in countries in Latin America, right? For them, it's a very different kind of world. Or in Africa, and there's folks here from Betty that have a booth that are working with African communities to develop that system, you know, and like the Naira, right? Like the levels of inflation there are unparalleled, and the government can decide, you know, the dollars, their money is worth a little bit less this day because we made some changes with a pen, right? And so those are the places that is really having a bigger impact that I think those stories are starting to be told. There's really cool documentaries coming forward, and more education will come.
I want to ask one question for Lana, unless you want to tie in on that.
I was just going to say, to your point, just to simplify it for those of us that are on city government to some level, just that trip and observing how Bitcoin impacted El Salvador. A lot of people ask me, were people really using it there? There were people who were literally selling pupusas by the side of the road that were using Bitcoin. The gentleman that was driving us around. And then there was an entire beach town called Bitcoin Beach. And it really gave you this sneak peek preview into how a country that was so destitute, impoverished, and riddled by crime has literally changed in part because of Bitcoin, just because of the idea and bringing people there to hold the international conference. I mean, it upped their tourism exponentially. And I don't doubt that they didn't pave roads and reopen a lot of those schools in part because of it. So although we are not on that end of the spectrum, you can see that we are experiencing our own issues in terms of economic issues, crime and whatnot. So, you know, the more we can open ourselves up to international travelers and people maybe possibly moving their companies here, I think we gain from that, whether it has anything to do with anyone investing in Bitcoin or not. Those are some of the like ancillary side benefits to just being open to it.
For sure. I think learning and getting over the fear of some of the bad headlines. I want to play, we're almost running out of time, and we're going to get the next panel, which is going to be Study Bitcoin with the lead of the USC Student Bitcoin Club and UCLA. But I want to do a skeet shooting, Bitcoin skeet shooting of like criticisms, because I'm sure it's not all sunshine, the emails you're getting. So we're going to go rapid fire. Lana's going to give a couple of like the common like criticisms of why the Bitcoin office is bad. And I want you guys to kind of shoot them down a little bit with your thoughts on them, just rough overview. So Lana, what are some of the criticisms that people say when we do this free event where we're selling nothing and just learning about Bitcoin?
Well, the funniest one is, why is the city spending so much money and resources on Bitcoin in this event? And I'm like,
I'll shoot that one
Yeah.
down. $0 cost item for the city. This is a $0 initiative. So we just shot that one down. What else?
pure benefit. The next biggest one is related to sustainability, that this is extremely bad for the environment, and why would we support something like this when we're a city that doesn't even allow balloons?
Max, Lisa, you guys know something about that. Can we shoot that down?
Bitcoin is funding renewable energy developments from Africa to Latin America to places like Texas. And it's actually lowering greenhouse gas emissions because of the number of projects, whether it's in the oil industry or landfill gas, where you are taking the methane that would have been emitted and converting it to CO2 and powering miners.
Okay, just real quickly, can I give my Warren Buffett example of why he hates Bitcoin?
Yeah.
He wanted to build 10 peaker plants in Texas. And in order to do so, he asked Texas for an 8.5% return on investment. He wanted a guaranteed 8.5%. He would put the money down, build these 10, 50 megawatt power plants. Now, in order to do that, it would have been like $1 on every month of my power bill. It would have been $1 for an individual, like $8 for the nail salon, a couple $100 for the Coca-Cola bottling plant near me. That would have been 500 megawatts. He said would really be helpful for Texas after those big winter storms. You need these plants, and we'll just take this little rate of return, and et cetera, et cetera. That would have been 500 megawatts. Riot, right, has 1,000 megawatts in Texas. Riot, the public company, went into the capital markets. They coordinated the capital. They did the construction. They hired the people. They have security. They get it all running. That's 1,000 megawatts that when the city or the towns need the power can go immediately back on it. And guess how much it cost me? $0. So these miners are lowering the cost of energy around the world.
And I think it comes back to resilience, right? Like Bitcoin miners are willing to go to places that others won't go. They're willing to tough it out. It's a very competitive space. And so we've seen, Bitcoin's response to the whole climate challenge by just further deepening their already existing love for renewable energy and excess. Bitcoin loves wasted and stranded energy. And all you have to do is look into California on how much solar gets wasted and dumped onto the system, which leads to higher electricity charges for us. And you'll understand why California should be looking at it. That's at 3 o'clock, but final takeaways before we jump into study Bitcoin. Lana, I'm sure there's some other, skeet shooting we could do later, but we'll have time during the California panel. Any other thoughts on today? And take us home, and we're going to bring in study Bitcoin.
I'm just super excited to see at this time on a Friday afternoon, even in the gusty winds, we've got a great positive group of people on the promenade walking up and down our streets. So for me, that's, if nothing else today, I think that's a win.
Amen. Thank you all. Stay tuned for the next panel with the leads of the UCLA USC Bitcoin clubs. And Lisa gets no break up here. So she's going to be moderating that panel. So stay tuned. Thank you guys.
Let's
and
go.
everyone at home, get down here. You still got time left. So come on down.
I'm burning. I just forgot I'm supposed to cover up right after.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sunday.
Gracias. Yeah, guys, you like really need to hold this to your
Forward buzz.
chin, or they will not hear you. It's like Lana was.
Check.
making fun of. Yeah,
Oh,
there
you really
go.
do.
So do we hold the microphones?
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, welcome back. We're at the pier in Santa Monica. Greatest Friday of the year. I have some real all-stars with me, and if you follow me anywhere, you know that I incessantly talk about college kids that are in the Bitcoin space and kids in general that are learning about Bitcoin because they are our future. And these guys really went out on a limb to start this very strange club about magic internet money. So I am delighted to be here with both of them. I want you guys to introduce yourselves and then maybe riff a little bit about like how you found magic internet money and what were you doing before you decided to get fabulously rich?
Ooh. All right. Well,
Tongue in cheek, by the way.
well, thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you, and what a wonderful Friday to celebrate Bitcoin. So, background about me, Kyle Knight. I'm here hosting the Bitcoin is Art theme as well as the Study Bitcoin theme. Just passionate about sharing Bitcoin culture and community with students, but also just the general community around me. And I kind of found Bitcoin, and fittingly for this panel, in undergrad. And I'm currently in grad school at UCLA Anderson in my second year, and founded Bitcoin Bruins, which is a community to advance access to Bitcoin education. And really we're here, with USC to have a couple universities representing. I have another partnership with a CSUN, which is also an LA university, to do a Bitcoin event. So just excited this year to continue promoting Bitcoin in our community and spreading that, access to the education. So
Awesome. I'm so honored to be here. So excited. It's amazing to see how how the Bitcoin community is just so easy to talk to, so friendly. Lisa, thank you for having us on. My name is Damien Schott. I'm a junior at USC. I'm founding the Trojan Bitcoin Club. And so I'm an economics major alongside a lot of my friends. And then as I've studied economics, I've realized over time, you realize what's wrong with the money. And you start looking for an alternative. And then suddenly you start hearing about this magic internet money. And I wanted to learn more about it. Besides just reading books and talking to people, I wanted to have a place on campus where we can learn about Bitcoin. And that takes us to now, founding the Bitcoin Club. Bitcoin is for everybody. Even though he's from UCLA, I'm from USC, we're supposed to be rivals, but Bitcoin is for everybody. We're just here to learn.
Well, you can't be rivals because there aren't enough of us in the Bitcoin space. So when Bitcoin is everyone, and it will be coming soon, very shortly, then you can go back to maybe being rivals or not. Maybe we can all just be gigantic Bitcoin lovers in our own little ecosystem of friendly people that are on the right path. Okay, so how did you first get interested in Bitcoin? I'm sorry to ask, I know, but I'm always really curious. What was the original spark?
Yeah, so I actually had 4 friends in my fraternity start a Bitcoin wealth management or wealth advising, you could say it, to capture the wealthy adults of the kids that went to my university to buy Bitcoin. And as a result of them being my best friends, I messed around on Coinbase a little. In 2017, October, that was a fun ride through January. And then I put everything in January, and then everything went to zero. So that was a great learning lesson. After graduating in 2020, I knew that I wanted to practice Bitcoin entrepreneurship. I knew that I wanted to be a part of the community. And fortunately, I had those friends and mentors who now worked at Bitcoin companies to kind of help me, guide me through this space. So it's been a pleasure learning about it. It's constantly a topic that I can study and appreciate. So I'm always looking forward to learning more about Bitcoin.
It's my favorite question to ask, Bitcoin rabbit hole journey. It's always so interesting to know how everyone fell down that rabbit hole. So for me specifically, I've always been interested more or less in money. I always thought it was interesting. And as I was studying economics, I was realizing, okay, so the dollar has lost 99% of its value since the 1950s, something along those lines. So you have to have your money put into a safer location. Well, I'm not a pirate, so I can't really store gold. It's really buy real estate at this age. That's unrealistic. Government bonds don't keep up with inflation. So I was curious, like what is Bitcoin? How does this work exactly? Because it's always presented as an alternative, but I didn't really understand. So, fell down the rabbit hole, aka I read the Bitcoin Standard, which I'm sure every Bitcoiner has experienced on their journey. And I realized, wow, this is really interesting. But there has to be more people my age that are interested in Bitcoin. So why isn't there any place on campus for me to talk about it? And that's all I'm trying to accomplish with the Trojan Bitcoin Club. Provide a community on campus for students who are genuinely curious about Bitcoin to learn. Because learning is powerful.
Okay, but really you were interested in money? Like you said, oh, I've always been interested. I didn't even know to be interested in money until I started learning about Bitcoin, right? I just took it, I took money for granted.
I'll say one of the funniest things about my relationship with Bitcoin is my relationship with Bitcoin and my family. So my family is now orange-pilled, up to grandparents, down to little cousins, across the board on Thanksgivings. It's now it wasn't always a family tradition to celebrate Bitcoin, but it certainly is now. But Grandpa, I have to say, is the biggest advocate. And it all happened because in 21, his portfolio, stock portfolio, did 0%. And he went, why is everybody else up and not me? And this is the guy that, as a kid, he would hand deliver Jim Cramer's, in paper printout to me, 10-page report. And I went, Grandpa, it's a simple solution, get a little exposure to this crazy idea. And he's really taken off with that. But yeah, I kind of forgot where we started.
No, we started on how'd you get interested in money?
Well, I want to tell a little story about like why I think money is interesting. So, my sister, who is here today, very very happy that she's here supporting me. She graduated from college, from a good university, and she just moved into. She got a job, and she moved into an apartment down here in Santa Monica. And honestly, that apartment is so small that it's not even called a studio apartment anymore. It's called a bachelor's unit. To the point where when you turn around inside that apartment, you literally bump into yourself. So I like to tell that joke. But the point of it is something is going on in our money supply. It has to be with the money, because why can people not afford to live anymore? What is changing? And that's, I want to get down to the answer. I want to figure out how we can help Gen Z, who's really scared.
Go ahead.
No, that's what Bitcoin represents.
I'll just add, when I grew up, I was someone that I just leaned into caring about others and giving back. And when I was looking at the way the world was kind of going down as I was graduating, it was, what's the root, right? Where's the root cause that you can do impact at scale? And money is that root, right? And to be able to be a part of this impact at scale, which is going to touch the 7 billion plus of us that walk this earth for the next however many, hopefully hundreds of years, to have any part of, that success is, for me, giving back in more than, I could ever imagine.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a terrible small talker. I'm going to just dive into a really personal question. You don't have to answer. But what are you afraid of? Did your fear, did personal fear, like you talked about people your age can't buy houses, or why 50 years ago did people have the ability to only have one earner in a family and 3 children, and now, your sister lives in a bachelor place. What, does anything concern you, or do you feel like any fear that you may have had has been assuaded because now you have Bitcoin?
You want me to go?
Sure. So I feel like the media really does a fantastic job at instilling fear in us about our world. I mean, I feel like ever since I was young, I was getting bombarded by just negative media. And then now with TikTok, now that a lot of people have a voice, I constantly see people, Gen Z, saying I can't find a job, I can't live, I have all this student debt, what am I going to do? There's so much negativity. And yeah, I'm absolutely terrified. I'm absolutely terrified that educated people who work hard aren't going to be able to save enough money to live, because their economic value is constantly being robbed from them. And I think Bitcoin is just so amazingly positive that it's like a movement to be part of this is the first real positive step we have towards a solution.
I'll just say, my fear was the status quo. I think growing up, I had a fantastic childhood. I was happy, and I got to the point where, you know, there's something special about, and it's not just being different, but it's trying stuff, trying something new, experimenting. For me as an entrepreneur and a Bitcoin entrepreneur, it's all about what's the next, and specifically, you know, building on something great. But I got to the point where I was just fearing, if this is the way the world is for the next 80 years, that status quo, that's a scary, scary place to be in for everyone, not even just the, you know, successful, not even just the Bitcoiners. It's just terrifying. What up, Andrew?
Buy some Bitcoin.
Buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I think that that fear is real, and especially in your age group, if you aren't terribly, terribly afraid of the future, then you're just dumb, because it's coming at you hard, and Bitcoin is your only protection mechanism at this moment, right? Until the Fed fixes their program, which I personally don't think they'll ever fix, right? Someone in the audience is agreeing with me. They're not going to fix it. And so what I really encourage, you know, my people in my circle, I'm like, we just got to forget their system. Like, I'm not going to criticize it. It's not working. It's broken. But let's just quit talking about it, and let's just keep these conversations going. So you guys are incredible doing this at your school. I want to learn about your clubs. I want to learn about your constituency. Like, are there any women in your club? You really don't have to answer that, but everyone says there aren't enough women in Bitcoin. I disagree, but it's wonderful to see more coming. So I want to know about your constituency, what people are concerned about in your club, what they're working on, and then I want to know what you're going to do after graduation.
Great. Yeah, so I'll start. Bitcoin Bruins, a bit of background, was started actually by Zach Young, who's now an analyst at TVP, Trammell Venture Partners. And he started as an undergrad, and it died out that summer after he graduated. So when I got back on campus, I hit up the blockchain at UCLA Discord. I said, is anybody into Bitcoin? And we got one response, and it was Zach. And of course, he had already graduated, but he was more than happy to help me kind of get the club back in shape. And so this summer was actually kind of the start of getting it in shape after my first year there. It is now a community. Bitcoin Bruins is an official community housed within the Entrepreneur Association. And we are housed under the Price Center of Entrepreneurship. So it is not a student affairs club, which every other club is, right? So we have a little extra leeway and flexibility when it comes to that. I started hosting or planning events at the end of this summer. This one is our first ever Bitcoin Bruins public debut, basically. So very excited for that. But a couple of the other events that I want to shout out is on November 1st, we have a Bitcoin and renewable energy expert panel with Bob Burnett, Daniel Batten, and Margot Pius. So an incredible.
Like on campus, or are they coming, or are you virtually? Oh my God, but that's amazing. They're incredible.
I tell my students, you know, I'm trying to bring value per second, right? Not just value in general, but, you know, I don't want to waste busy people's time. And with Bitcoin and high value Bitcoin education, you know, and bringing these, that panel is incredible. And so hopefully with it being virtual, the Bitcoin Student Network, you know, our goal is, at least when you talk about constituents, right now, we're still in the place where people are just excited about it. They know I'm the Bitcoin guy in class. I make comments to the professors who don't always love it. But at this point, there is interest from women and men. There's interest from pretty much every student about what is Bitcoin. They just don't know, and they're excited to learn because they're in a position to kind of take advantage of this after they graduate. So what am I doing after graduation? Hopefully continuing to give back to the school and just that program. But currently, you know, just pursuing Bitcoin entrepreneurship. I live in Bitcoin collectibles in the Bitcoin community. I love traveling to Bitcoin events. I currently run a company called Coil Breaks Bitcoin Trading. It's Coil Breaks BTC, but Bitcoin trading cards is what it is. And I just think providing Bitcoin education that's entertaining and fun helps with the stickiness. And so I like to live in that arena. So we'll see what comes from that.
All right.
All right. So the Trojan Bitcoin Club is still a new journey. We just started getting the work in progress, and we're hopefully going to become official in the spring. So still working on that part. But I feel like I've brought together a fantastic group of individuals that just want to learn. And again, with media, you always hear about Bitcoin. So especially because Gen Z is so digitally native and we're always living in a digital world, students are curious. I mean, when you hear about Bitcoin, you just usually want to jump at that. So everyone's curious, everyone wants to learn. After graduation, the dream is to, yeah, like you said, keep giving back, keep educating people in the space, working in the space, building some of the toys. That's really the dream.
How many people are in your clubs? What's the community size like?
So right now, because we're unofficial, we have like a solid 12 members who are really committed. But I'm hoping when we can start advertising on campus, that it will grow. And then also what Kyle was saying, being part of now one bigger umbrella organization, the Bitcoin Students Network. Truly an honor.
Shout out Ella.
Shout out Ella, thank you so much.
Arsh.
Ars. I got to meet you, Ars.
Yeah, somebody give a little background on the Bitcoin Students Network or what they do.
Yeah, either one.
Sure. So the Bitcoin Students Network basically exists as an umbrella organization that basically tries to centralize all of the Bitcoin students clubs that are around the US, really connects them all. So they're helping provide resources. They have a board of advisors that are very involved in the crypto space.
I mean, shout out to their board of advisors.
Oh, fantastic.
Right? Martel, Michael Riani, Jeff Booth.
Truly amazing.
Like there's 6 or 8 of these folks that run huge Bitcoin companies that are supporting that organization, which says a lot about what they think about how important college students are, or students in general, younger people are getting into this space.
Absolutely, and they all come from like slightly different backgrounds, but they're all there to help us, and we're all stronger together. And with the Bitcoin, we have now having just a massive group chat and connecting Bitcoin students from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, and the United States. Incredible.
Sir.
Don't mind us.
Yeah.
Healthy day here, riding a bike on the promenade. And so one of the initiatives at the Bitcoin Students Network, just for those that don't know, maybe there are other students that are looking to get involved in Bitcoin. Bitcoin Students Network has really strong relationships within the Bitcoin community so that you guys can get out and get jobs.
Yeah, at Bitcoin Bruins, I mean, besides the education, we want to get students jobs in Bitcoin. I want UCLA to be a place where Bitcoin companies can go find high quality human capital that is going to be scarce in this industry in general, right? And when it comes to the Bitcoin Student Network, we are the value. I mean, the person next to you is the most valuable person in your network at this point, right? The Bitcoin Student Network just has such an incredible community of givers, right? Everybody wants to help, and everybody has a perspective to contribute something valuable to that conversation. So I've gotten a ton of value from the Bitcoin Student Network myself over the past 6-9 months. I mean, pretty much since it started. I don't know the exact date, but I have to, it's been incredible participating.
Yeah, they announced at Madeira in Portugal at that conference. And actually, Jack Dorsey is a supporter, in effort, etc. He let the founders go on stage right before he spoke, right? So Madeira, it was in a soccer stadium or a football stadium, I guess maybe they call it. It was a packed house. And so everyone was in their seats to see Jack. And the 5 minutes before he gave to the Bitcoin Students Network so they could really come in and share their mission. And by the way, shout out, it's free to join. Everything they do is open source. So all of their past events, meetings, all the notes, probably are your clubs, are you guys open sourcing the agendas and the speakers and the videos?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bitcoin Bruins will ideally always remain a free club to join. I do not want any restrictions for Bitcoin, access to Bitcoin education. It's already hard enough to get in.
It is. Well, also, I think the difference, maybe you guys can talk on this, there probably are blockchain clubs at your college. I can only say I have one small experience with a tiny little knowledge of a blockchain club in a school in upstate New York. And they were like total shyster coin, like traders, and they kept getting token issues from these companies who were trying to, pump up their own stuff. Like those clubs are sometimes they can really be used so that, I don't want to name names, but like I would name their names if I could remember. But like there's total shit coins would go to these schools and give them tokens so the kids would get all excited about it and really pump the bags of the coin. It's like, stop, that's gross. So you guys are a totally different, I guess you're a totally different business model. You're...
Absolutely. We've made it clear that the advertise with Bitcoin only. We're not there to provide financial advice, no trading schemes. We're there solely to educate on Bitcoin for anyone who's interested. USC does have a blockchain club, but the people that are most involved with the space understand that there is a difference. The blockchain club exists mostly towards software developers that are interested in coding on the blockchain. They host hackathons, and I met the advisor of the blockchain club, and he's very supportive of the Bitcoin club. And the Bitcoin club, we have our own advisor. Shout out Professor Nick Bhatia, who teaches Bitcoin at USC.
Oh, big time. Shout out Nick.
Yeah, shout out Nick Bhatia. He's fantastic. He's going to come on as our advisor. I'm really excited for that. But at least right now, I don't see any friction between us and blockchain club. No beef there.
So I'll add actually something funny from the competitor side of things. I went to UST's 2024 Digital Assets Initiative conference, or it was the blockchain conference is what it was called. And that was started with a $5 million grant from VanEck. And it's a crypto blockchain or, conference, an organization. And while I admire and acknowledge that there's a lot of value in that, that is a platform that's being provided to students at other universities, and not necessarily on the scale of VanEck, but at UCLA with Larry Fink's name on the Fink Center of Finance, with Larry Fink being a graduate of the Anderson School of Business and Management. My hope is that we kind of have a clean slate to start something, as I said, different than the status quo. I think a lot of venture capitalists, a lot of protocols and just crypto organizations are able to put money into the students and into the academic institutions that excite students and excite the faculty because they're getting money into the system, and it's providing opportunities. It's just, is it in the right direction? And so while I'm actually organizing the Unchained Blockchain Business Forum, which will be in January, about 250 attendees.
Shout out Unchained.
Shout out Unchained. The first part of that was really good. Yeah. So, and speaking on that, it's a shared conference between the Entrepreneur Association and Andertech. Andertech is the tech association at UCLA Anderson, but what's interesting is they have a VP of Web3 and crypto. And I'm really the Bitcoin side of things, and it's a interesting opportunity to navigate the waters of bringing Bitcoin to this conversation, bringing Bitcoin to the forum, and having it be a part of, the full day event that I think it deserves representation. So that was a lot, but I really hope that this conference can provide some Bitcoin signal to a blockchain-oriented community.
Well, I think if you're in blockchain and not in Bitcoin, you just haven't been in it long enough, right?
I really think that there's so many exciting things in blockchain that it's always the new, right? And when you're an undergrad, I actually had a Bitcoin student network event in Nashville. Students brought up the point where if you were an undergrad and you can't necessarily take advantage of Bitcoin's 100x because you don't have a salary, how are you retiring in 10 years? How are you getting yourself in a position to have wealth and feel like a Bitcoiner, feel like a winner? And I, for the first time, understood if you're 18 or 19 right now, you're looking to other places for opportunity in blockchain and crypto. And it's unfortunate that there's that misdirection, but and I understood the perspective after they shared that.
Okay, I don't understand that at all, because all that stuff is going to zero, factually. Statistically, going to zero.
Yeah, rug pull.
Rug pull. And so you really, I think that it's the folks like you who are in it for the long haul, and you're really looking to, and you probably have created a spreadsheet of how much money is it going to take for me to live every single month until, I can reasonably retire. And I can tell you just from Ella's perspective, that's what we did when she was 15. That's how she decided how she was going to build her high school curriculum, how she was going to build her college curriculum. Because one of her early statements was, I don't want to have to get a job just because it pays me a lot of money. And I said, totally fine. Build yourself a spreadsheet so that you can figure out at 60, how much money you'll have. And then from 60 to 95, because that's when my grandparents, they lived to 95 and 97, Tell me how you can have that money last from 60 to 95. And it's hard. And I would say that most of these people that are in these blockchain clubs have never done that one simple exercise.
I think one of our big goals of the club, and I've corrected many people on this, is that we try to separate the terms Bitcoin with the terms crypto, because we're really trying to get that across that you're Bitcoin only. And Bitcoin has so much merit to it, just simply from the fact that we don't know exactly who's behind it. There is no getting rich quick scheme from Bitcoin. And I completely agree. I think studying Bitcoin lets you prepare for the future. And that's something that Gen Z truly wants to do. We haven't been able to.
I want to add the point that I actually talked to faculty and staff at Anderson about, which is the reason I'm positioning Bitcoin under the Entrepreneur Association and under the Price Center for Entrepreneurship is because Bitcoin is a mindset. It's a way that you see the world. It changes all your behavior.
Yes.
It changes, it's your core, right? And it's similar to an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur's mindset changes the way that you see the world. It gives you empowering, a sense of empowerment as an individual to go out and be successful and accomplish something. And so if you are, this is the call, if you're interested in crypto, if you're interested in blockchain, it's okay to be interested in tech. I won't shame that. I think it is also good for you to explore something that can really drastically change your life for the positive.
Yeah. Well, we have about 5 more minutes, and I want to give all the time to you guys so that you can really riff on anything that you want to talk about. But this panel, we really need to give a shout out to Bitcoin Magazine. Thank you for the live stream. Thank you for making this happen and for bringing Stuart and your team here. Bitcoin Magazine is amazing, and they actually partnered with the Bitcoin Students Network in Nashville. They gave out 1,500 passes to the Nashville conference. So anybody didn't know that? I mean, that was a significant chunk of revenue, but they felt so strongly that college students, high school students should be able to come to the conference that you had to apply, but everyone that applied got a free ticket, which was, I mean, we were at that pizza party and there were 200 or 300 people that walked through that door that day, all on a free ticket to a Bitcoin conference. So put that on your calendar for next year and shout out, thank you, Bitcoin Magazine.
Thank you, Bitcoin Magazine.
Thank you, Bitcoin Magazine. And I want to say one more thing. Don't be afraid to learn about Bitcoin. This is the message I want to really convey. Bitcoin is truly, I believe, it's multifaceted. My sister, for example, she doesn't come from a technical background, but she understands the beauty of Bitcoin as a social movement. And Bitcoin is so much more than just an investment. Bitcoin is freedom. You fix the money, you fix the world.
Well said. Well said.
I had a thought, and then you said Bitcoin is freedom, and I went Bitcoin is freedom money, and that's what I'm stuck on. For me, if you're a student and you're interested in having a career and getting a job and being paid, I think it's important for you to understand as a part of your education that may not be discussed from a faculty side or a school side, but it may take some personal initiative, but do your own research about Bitcoin, understand what money is, understand how your money and your savings being devalued and debased. And if it doesn't hit home in the United States, look to other countries, look to around the world. Bitcoin being global, Bitcoin being incredibly diverse, it includes all of us. And I think it's important that everybody takes it upon themselves to, again, do their own research and kind of believe in the new.
Absolutely. Starts right here too. And when you guys are like having a sleepless night, pull up on YouTube or wherever it is the Santa Monica when we went before the city council. Because this guy over here, like a bunch of people that work in Bitcoin were there, and we had all really like prepared. We were going to sound so smart and go before the city council. And they gave everyone like 2 minutes or 5, can't remember. You just killed it. You knocked it out of the park. We were like, why did we even him? So thank you.
I'll shout both of you guys out for that effort. Dom asked me if I was going to be able to make it. I'm like, I could fly out for the day. And he's like, oh, no. And then I saw what happened. I went, I would have flown out for that. Are you kidding, Dom? That looked amazing. So,
if anyone ever asks you to come to a Bitcoin conference, fly out for the day.
Fly out. Unbelievable. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
It was amazing. So, guys, how much time do we have? Can we just keep riffing, or what's our?
We got the next panel, but
All right, they got the next panel. They're kicking us off. This is a great day. Thank you to all these folks that have come out here and stood in the street and sat in the stands. You guys are incredible. Shout out to my new friend. I won't dox her, but there was a former Goldman Sachs commodities person talking about going to work in Bitcoin. I'm just saying this disease is spreading across the ranks. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
is it good? Let it rip.
I aspire to
We're
have
live?
that level of chill
Okay.
with the dog.
Hey, okay, so this is the self-custody panel,
We need
and
those.
I'm here with D++, and I'm here with Renata from Fedi. D++ is a educator, Bitcoin educator and Bitcoin developer, and actually, she's acknowledged in the back of my book because I learned a lot about hashing and mining and hierarchical deterministic wallets from D++.
No way.
Yep, I did. I'll have to give you a copy of the book back there, you'll see.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What did you learn about
Well-
HT wallets? What was the takeaway with HT wallets?
The takeaway was exactly how you hash one way, and I used your milkshake allegory
Yes.
in my book, that a private key can make all of these things that can't be made back. So you can give a public address to someone. Well, wait, we're jumping ahead of ourselves,
Okay,
but
sorry,
that's what I learned.
sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna back
I
up
get
a little
so
bit.
excited when anyone says hierarchical deterministic. I just can't help it. So I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, because we're here in Santa Monica and for the noobs and for the public,
Yeah,
I wanted to,
we will.
well, first of all, so we've got Renata from Fedi, and we've got D++, a developer and educator. Okay, we're going to get to them in a second. So first of all, I just want to say that Bitcoin is property, and it's sovereign property. So the way that Satoshi designed it with code is a little bit foreign to us in the traditional finance and the legacy finance world, where we are used to having intermediaries, we're used to having brokers, we're used to having someone always sort of be our babysitter and take care of something. And now for some things, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the great thing is with Bitcoin, we, for the first time ever, can take full custody. No one else can take it from us. It's censorship resistant, surveillance free. You do not have to ask for permission. It's yours 24/7, 365 to send it to anyone, anywhere, anytime you want without a third party. And that's really what Bitcoin does. It reassigns value from one user to another user without an intermediary. But because there's businesses, there's corporations, there's sovereign states, there's all kinds of different models of self-custody. And so today is a perfect time to talk about that because both of you ladies know a lot about self-custody and are on different sides of the gamut. They can work together, but on different sides of what's available.
Well, I feel like people don't ask me enough questions about self-custody because I always get put on lightning panels. And I'm like, guys, I know a lot about on-chain too. Like, let's talk about on-chain for once. But to your point, Bitcoin is a bearer asset, but it's really the first time in human history that we've ever had a digital bearer asset, which is to say digital property that you yourself can take custody of. We are, I think, familiar with the concept of gold in that you can keep gold bars in a safe, you can custody them, but you can't teleport them.
A lot of friction.
So Bitcoin is like gold plus teleportation.
Absolutely. And let's start maybe, D++, with you, with just the pure basics, because we know that Bitcoin lives on the blockchain or the time chain. It's not really in a wallet.
Mm-hmm.
So people get confused.
Yeah.
They think they have their Bitcoin in a wallet,
Yeah.
but we know these are keys. Would you like
Yeah.
to describe that?
Yeah, so wallet is actually a misnomer, right? Because the Bitcoin isn't in your wallet. And so you get some of these, well, actually guys that said, well, it's not a wallet, it's actually a signing device. And I'm like, okay, well, my credit card in my wallet is a signing device as well. So I still call it a freaking wallet because it's a symbol for what it does. So the wallet does not contain your Bitcoin, but rather it contains your keys by which you can use to sign transactions, to move your Bitcoin, to teleport your digital gold. So what you have to do at the end of the day is make sure that you don't lose those keys.
That's right, because since Bitcoin is on the blockchain and time chain, it's foreign for us, but it really doesn't move. So we want to hang on to our private key or a secret key. No one else should ever see that, but that reassigns whatever value we want to transfer and send to somebody. But it also creates our public keys so that we can give those keys to people and receive them. But like maybe the 20 purses you have in your closet, D, you can just show someone one of your purses so they don't see all the money in all your other purses.
Right.
And that public key can create that purse and say, here, put some Bitcoin in there. So if it is exposed.
What I would say is just with great power comes great responsibility. Because
Yes.
we have this digital gold that we can teleport, but we are responsible for those keys, right? So those private keys, the password, if you will, we have to find some way to keep that private. And so the big question is, well, how do you do that? And that's really all self-custody is about, is how do you keep this password to yourself such that nobody else can find it?
That's right. And that's really what a Bitcoin wallet does. It basically secures your key and it'll create the seed word, or what I like to call the DNA of 12 or 24 words that you can recreate that if you lose your device. Now this I think was what's great where Fedi can come in, because you help solve some of the interference and the friction and the first step level for some people. Would you like to describe first what Fedi does? Because I know this is newer for a lot of Bitcoiners.
Yeah, so Fedi is a community super app, basically. And we allow individuals, we do like in the middle of the ground. So you have, right now, you have a self-custody option. And about when we go around, the feedback that we get about self-custody is like, it's so hard, it's so expensive. So I go, for example, to Africa, and the guy said to me, I prefer buy $70 in Bitcoin than have a $70 wallet, cold wallet, right? And then you have another option, which is not the best one, which is the third party, which is, maybe you guys are familiar with this situation. Maybe a guy with a rounded hair can say, I can save your funds for you, don't worry. And then he go out.
Trust me, bro.
Grab your money and disappear, right? So like FTX, baby. So this is another option as well. So what Fedi tries to do is like go on the ground on this, which is we have a community-based wallet. So some of you are in the same generation as me. You might remember the Captain Planet. You have like the guys that hold a ring with fire, wind, heart. So they together, they created the Captain Planet. Right?
I bring the heart.
Exactly. So the idea is the same. You have members of the community, choose trusted members to hold the keys for you. And then when they come together, they created this wallet for the whole community. The cool thing about it is like they don't know who inside of that community bank holds what, who they are, who they send money to. While we are within the community, we call this federation, they are the servers for you. So this helps a lot to reduce this friction. And on the other hand, you don't have the factor of KYC, because the KYC in this case is a punch in our face, right? Like, it's my neighbor, it's my son. So how are they going to steal from me, right? And the cool thing is it's a multi-sig wallet. Multi-sig is like you need at least a minimal amount of people to sign to get the whole Bitcoin. So if you have 4 people, you're gonna need like 3 guys to accept, to collude and steal from the rest of the community, which is way more difficult than the guy from FTX go around and think you can get your money. So it's what we are trying to do in the middle ground in this case.
Yeah, that's great you said that, because the important thing to remember is that self-custody is really all that technically exists. It's whether, are you going to custody it or are you going to have someone else like
it's the
Sam?
gold standard, of course. Yeah, but there is friction there. Like even nowadays, I educate people. They say, why 12 words in this order? What am I going to put this on? You know, it's still something we are used to passwords, right? Like which is not the best one.
Well, we're used to passwords that you can have somebody reset on your behalf.
Exactly.
And with Bitcoin, it is high risk, high reward in that if you lose those 12 words, there's no recourse.
Exactly. And I worked before in a peer-to-peer exchange. And most of the people, I would say, guys, do self-custody. You manage a lot of money. And they would say to me, can you hold for me? So there is also this culture within us that we are disempowered enough. We don't have alternative, right? Oh, I wanted to use WhatsApp. There isn't any WhatsApp equivalent that I hold my information. No, so I'm gonna give my phone to WhatsApp, you know? So we are used to give to the third party what should be on us. So it's also a mentality that Bitcoin needs to work around our culture. That we can hold be empowered enough to do this.
Be your own bank.
Exactly.
Yeah, many Bitcoiners know this, but it's foreign and new to the public. It's strange for them to think that, wow, so just 12 words or 24 words, whichever you choose, is my Bitcoin. Like that's my wealth. Like I can travel with that in my head.
Yes.
I can stamp it in steel. I can make copies of it, give it to people I trust. And then like you just mentioned, Renata, you can also do a multi-signature wallet and have 3 sets of those words where any 2 sets of those will transfer or sign your Bitcoin. Teleport.
Exactly.
Dee, do you have a favorite custody model, either for new people or for people that have a substantial amount, like on both sides, that you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody does want to take custody of their funds, which you don't have to do straight away, you can wait until you accrue, a certain threshold of Bitcoin. I think Andreas Antonopoulos likes to use the tears test. Like, would you cry if this Bitcoin was to cease to be in your custody? And if you would, probably time to get a hardware wallet. So I'm a big fan of hardware wallets. I'm a big fan of the cold card, kind of industry standard. And I do think that pushing noobs into multi-sig is quite premature. I think it's quite dangerous. Because I do think something like a cold card with a single signature without a passphrase, it's good enough, again, according to my guru and to Andreas Antonopoulos, it's good enough for, by his estimation, single or double-digit millions. I mean, your money is not going anywhere, right? It's just a matter of whether or not you can look after those words. If you did want to do something like a multi-signature, you can go with what I call collaborative custody. And of course, there's services Swan and Unchained Capital and Costa. And I think those are definitely a better route than trying to roll your own multi-signature wallet, just because there's a lot of moving parts. And even for someone like me, who is a developer, who is technical, there's a simplicity to it, but there's also a bit of friction with the user experience, where different wallets have different ways of communicating some of these concepts to the users, which is why I definitely think 1,000%, if you are going to go multi-sig, regardless of your skill level, I think you should go with a collaborative custody model, because they hold your hand, but they cannot take your Bitcoin from you. Exactly. They couldn't take it if they wanted to.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's why I've started to change the wording a little bit and call it collaborative security, so that they know, like, look, no one is holding your Bitcoin.
Can't.
Yeah, remember, it's still on the blockchain, but they're securing with one of those 3 keys, the access. Yeah.
I think that's the confusion that always comes to people's mind. Like, if your wallet is the passport to your Bitcoin, right? Like, it's not your actual Bitcoin. So it's very important to understand this difference in this case, for in general, like for the extent public. And this is so serious, guys, because if you leave your money on Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, the risk that you have, it's like one, you lose the amazing property of Bitcoin, which is you can have the control, right? And the second part of this, it's basically, I've been seeing this around the globe, like they simply can say to the government, look, Renata here has X amount of money, and the government is gonna say, freeze their account. I wanna see this money, I wanna see what's going on here, you know? So it's super serious. Like sometimes people don't realize that. I have a lot of friends that still have a lot of money in big exchanges, and this freaks me out a lot.
Yeah, the reality is that for a lot of you that are new to Bitcoin, it's similar to having cash in your pocket or a checking account or a savings account. There's different levels to hold your Bitcoin. And as much as we hate exchanges and know that you should never leave your money on an exchange, it's okay to go
buy.
It's okay to buy if it's easy for you. If you already have Robinhood, you already have Cash App, whatever, go ahead and buy it, get started there. And you can always have a little bit there if you want to spend, like if you want to spend some sats and go down and play D's game at the end of the
But you earn sats.
Earn sats, yes, exactly, even better. That's great, but then as you build up, and like you said, Dee, if there's a certain amount of Bitcoin that you're like, this is generational wealth, I don't want to lose it, you want to secure it with that in mind.
Can I just say, because the true reason that I agreed to come on this panel was because I wanted to show my game. Just real quick.
Let's do it.
I hope you guys will both come play, because at the end of the promenade, I have a game that I'm calling Bit Cornhole, and it's just like regular cornhole, except for every time you get a beanbag into the hole, you get paid lightning sats on the fly, instantly. And it's
amazing.
Really cool. I've been working really, really hard on it. And I've also open sourced everything, so I'd love you to bring my game to your community. You will have to be a little technical, but I've laid everything out for you that you're gonna need. A couple sensors, a couple microcontrollers, of course, a couple Bitcoin boards, and all of my code that I'm making available to you for free.
I heard a rumor that you get sats before the bag even hits the floor. Like,
oh my God,
as it's going through the hole in slow motion, sats just came to my wallet.
If the, the sensor pulls every second, so if it just happens to pull while it's midair, then absolutely the sats come midair. Absolutely.
That's amazing. So Renata, I think we got a little bit of time left. So can you explain how either a business or a community would use Fedi? Because I'm still new to learning about Fedi because I learned all about self-custody, but I can...
Can I just say one more thing, which is we can actually hack the game to give you eCash instead of Lightning Sats. We'll do the Fedi version. Let's talk later because I think we should definitely make a Fedi version.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So Fedi is what is behind Fedi. We use a protocol called FediBit, open source protocol. Like Bitcoin is an open source protocol, and what it does basically, it's like they get this concept of creating one single wallet for the community. And then what Fedi does is like, okay, amazing, we have this great technology. How are we going to convert this in a scalable power for everyone, for simple people, right? So what we try to mirror is like the feeling of a regular person using the mobile phone. So we have chat in there that you can send money within people. You have like iOS web apps that you can use your Bitcoin inside of the wallet. And you have also the Federation wallet. So the idea is like most of the people here are OG Bitcoiners. So you probably have a folder on your phone written BTC with several web apps there, right? So we'll try, and this took probably years for you to build an understanding. So the idea is like to digest this and bring to newbies like in 2-3 minutes. So when I go to places to do workshop, we play telephone on the chat, we send funds to each other, and after that we go to Bitrefill and top up with the phone or buy a gift card. So in 3 minutes, they learn that Bitcoin is easy, and Bitcoin is very practical, it's money. So after that, the next thing that happens, they come to me and ask like, okay, but if I lose my access or something like that. So then we teach them about the 12 seed phrases that we have on the app, but also something that we are testing still on beta, which is you can take a picture, take a video of you saying Fedi, and then this is encrypted in a document, in a file. And in case you don't have your 12 seed phrases, you can send this to the guardians of the Federation, and they can check, okay, this image is you, so I can authorize you to have access to our wallet back again. So the idea is like digest the whole thing for a newbie.
I feel like for me, because I'm newer to eCash, I would want to know the members of the Guardians. Yeah, personally.
So what we've been learning, we thought initially, even if you read the documents, all the documents, we would say, you have to know who the Guardians are. So what we learned from that is we're gonna have different types of federations, different types of communities for different usage based on the trust. So if you know the Guardians, is the place that you're gonna put the most of the money. If you trust on them, of course. But you might know the community leader.
Yeah.
So we had, for example, Bitcoin Madeira, right? I know the community leaders there. I don't know who the Guardians are.
Right.
So I would put a little bit more money there because I trust on them. But you have, like, for example, Bitcoin Principles, which is a public federation created by I don't know who. I don't know the community. I would use for transactional. So with that, you have like the mobility that I want to buy bread. I don't want the baker join my private federation, right? So I can use the public federation to transact with him. And then I store my biggest amount where I know the people are.
Well, so Renato, I'm sure you personally self-custody Bitcoin, right? You've been a Bitcoiner, all right? So how do you differentiate between what you're putting in Fedi and what you're self-custodying?
So in Fedi right now, we are in beta. So I use Bitcoin Principles to transact, basically. And I do have a federation that I try, like I put like bigger amounts. But like on myself, on my end, I use code card as well.
Yes. Great. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think people sometimes forget, even Bitcoiners, that this is a global asset. It's global property. And to be able to have access to your value, your past contribution to society, and go anywhere in the world, 24/7, 365, is pretty amazing. And to have that utility, even though here in Santa Monica, people may not need it, it's like our money is debasing less, it's devaluing and diluting less than like the global south or other disenfranchised places. Many people need it just to survive, to pay their bills, to not have that much friction and slippage and fees. And so it becomes important to them to use as money. And so these various wallets or a Fedi system makes sense.
But can I just say about disempowering people? Because it's after working a lot of, like more than 5 years with these communities, and after the banks in California get bankrupt, I discovered that in fact, like it's not the guy in Uganda that doesn't have access to finance has the same disempowerment of a rich guy in California if both doesn't have power and control of their money as well. Right?
Yeah, physicians or plumbers or so pottery makers. Yeah.
They both are disempowered. We don't realize that because it comes so easy to us. And I come from Brazil, and one of the things that I learned a lot is in Brazil, on these communities like us, we trust way more on our neighbors, on our community, because they're close to us, right? And because our institutions are very corrupt. And in the case of US or the Western, you guys are losing the connection as a community because you trust too much on the institutions. And now I'm seeing this changing in the Western as well. Now people are coming back to associations because you kind of like questioning the institutions that are on charge, right? So it's a change of also the way that you see the world as well.
I think the millennial generation in particular is questioning, and I certainly feel a lot more comfortable putting my savings in Bitcoin than I do USD.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, let's touch real quick. We're almost out of time here, but the ETFs are obviously very popular, right? There's 11 of them. They're gobbling up Bitcoin. Traditional finance and legacy finance is coming in. So I believe they're helpful and a useful tool. But what's your viewpoint, Dee? I know you have I think a long time ago, you had some of your retirement funds in GBTC, as a lot of us did, right? Which is okay because it was difficult. We couldn't get retirement funds at the time into actual Bitcoin. And so rather than have it sitting there on these bonds that we know are losing against inflation that will never hurdle, we wanted to just get as much Bitcoin as we could. How and where? What do you think now? Because people on the street have even asked me, they're like, well, can't I just go buy the ETFs? Thoughts?
Well, so, okay, we talked about custody, right? So there's different ways that you can own Bitcoin, right? You can have your own Bitcoin that you custody yourself, or you can trust me, bro, trust somebody else with your Bitcoin. So with the ETFs, you're trusting a custodian.
And you really don't have Bitcoin. You can have an accretion that's similar to Bitcoin, but you really just own a share in a fund and they're buying Bitcoin. And maybe that's okay for certain corporations or retirement funds that haven't figured out that you can, because you can now custody Bitcoin, even a corporation, even.
Well, there's a little bit less friction, because if you already have a brokerage account, then you can kind of just use what you've already got. One thing that I've noticed is that there's ever any friction, especially with regard to KYC, people are a little hesitant to get onboarded to Bitcoin. So I just took my GBTC and I transferred it over to Fidelity. Right, so I do have some Fidelity. Let's be honest, right? I do have some. It's not
There's nothing wrong with that.
All my Bitcoin, right? But I do have some in my brokerage account.
Just 50% of your Bitcoin?
No.
All right, we're just about running out of time. One last question for both of you. So I've been running into lots of people here on the street and having them download wallets. I'm sending sats and they can win sats over there. What is your favorite Bitcoin wallet and or Lightning wallet for the phone for small amounts of Bitcoin? And is it the same thing?
Strike. And for all y'all that are going to come play my game, please do yourself a favor and get Strike, strike.me. There is KYC, a little bit of friction. If you don't want to be KYC'd, go to Coinos, coinos.io, and you can get signed up with 0 personal identifiable information, and then bring one of those 2 wallets to me, and you're going to win Lightning sats in Bitcornhole.
That's amazing. So I would say Fedi, of course, but like I also use a lot of them and be using as well. Like Strike is a great one. Blue is a great one too. Wallet of Satoshi, it's a great for the starters, right? Not to stay with the funds there, because we didn't talk about it, but like there is also wallets that you can't do self-custody through them, but you can use exchange and all.
Yeah.
And Blink also is a very interesting wallet as well.
For my game, I love Strike. I love Coinos. My daily driver is definitely Zeus with my own node, and Phoenix.
Phoenix, yes.
Is amazing, but I'm not recommending it because they pulled out of the US.
And
But
Breeze.
Phoenix D, if you're a little nerdy, you can run the daemon.
You seem a
on
little
the
nerdy.
CLI,
Yes.
and I love me some Phoenix D.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies. Everybody,
Thank you.
not your keys, not your coins.
Exactly.
Secure your Bitcoin. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's go play Bitcornhole. Oh yeah. Oh, careful, that's gonna fly away. Whatever it is. Okay, perfect.
All right, we're good to go.
Hello, hello, hello. Are you ready
Jake's
to listen
Thank you.
on a topic that is going to dive into Bitcoin mining?
Oh, Bitcoin mining.
Bitcoin mining.
No one wants to hear about that. We want to talk about the weather in Santa Monica.
This is actually an ASIC desk. An ASIC is a specialized computer that mines Bitcoin, and it is renewable wind powered. So I just want to highlight that. And Dom and some other folks from around here built it. All right, I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of an intro about yourselves.
I'm Ella Huff's mom. My name is Lisa. I work in Bitcoin mining. I just talk about Bitcoin nonstop.
I'm Christine Cranley. I do stranded gas Bitcoin mining. So we take energy that's usually burned up and we turn it into digital monetary energy.
She's really a big deal, and we should definitely be asking her what she did before, but I'm not sure she wants to talk about it.
Before Bitcoin.
Nothing.
And I'm Megs, and I advise a company that takes waste tires and converts it to oil and then mines Bitcoin. And I worked for the government for a decade on low carbon economic transition.
And you also travel all over the world educating people, like high up people about Bitcoin mining.
Yes.
You really make it simple for people.
Oh, hopefully. So, okay, hold on a second. We have two gals from the oil and gas industry. And when I think of California, I think renewables. Does California have oil and gas?
I mean, last time I checked, driving down the highway, you could pretty much see the rigs out in the derricks out in the. You may have never noticed, or you just didn't know what to look for, but yeah, they kind of do.
So what's the connection, ladies, between Bitcoin mining and oil and gas?
Well, you know, it's not necessarily oil and gas. So I've been spending a lot of time up in Northern California, beautiful. And they have Lake Shasta there. So they have a huge dam that they could easily put more water through and make Bitcoin with that. Or all this solar, right? So there's tons of it when the sun's out or when the wind's blowing, you got a lot of wind. And if you don't have enough, you can soak it up with Bitcoin mining. So that's the beautiful thing about mining is it goes and it soaks up like a sponge all that energy that's thrown away.
That normally would be wasted. And so it's really interesting. So because I spent a decade in government where we were trying to create, you know, either incentives to decarbonize or fund low carbon infrastructure, and usually there's not enough money in like the ratepayer pocket or the taxpayer pocket. Well, we suddenly have this third pocket now, Bitcoin, that's, you know, being built right next door to these solar, to these wind plants, and a lot of places like in Texas, they're grid disconnected, so they do not have the transmission lines yet connected to these stations to send all that power to the big cities. And so the miners are actually helping subsidize and build that out until the infrastructure gets built. And I think that's a beautiful thing because there's still so much criticism about Bitcoin and, you know, not being environmental when I'm actually literally seeing it build the infrastructure. And not just in Texas and North America, like this is happening in Latin America, but I think some of the most exciting projects are in Africa where you have towns that have no power before, you know, kids have to stop studying once the light goes off. They do surgeries by candlelight. And the Bitcoin mining companies come in and they provide revenue to a potential plant to get built. And we're seeing that. We're seeing micro hydro stations get built out in African towns. And then the whole town kind of transforms because they suddenly have power, they can get a textile mill, and folks have light. So I think that's pretty incredible, you know, seeing that play out. What are you guys seeing sort of in the industry and sort of these co-relationships develop and the economic impacts too, broader than just that?
Well, Christine and I have a mutual friend, Joel Fulford. His company is 10 Net Zero, and they really explain it to people like they are a portable pipeline. So I think, you know, if I live in California and it's just beautiful here, right? It's a little different than Houston, where everything's concrete. Like, you guys don't want your beautiful natural surroundings disrupted by a bunch of infrastructure. And you have to do that, right? Like, in order to make the magical thing happen every morning when you wake up and you turn your coffee pot on, like, something has to be built in order to get you that power. But like these ladies were saying, there's so much extra power. And if there's some sort of fuel source, whether it's used cooking oil or hydro from a dam or no matter what it is, you can really turn that into like your own portable pipeline situation to eat up that energy and just start mining Bitcoin. And I'm not quite sure, I mean, if you guys are watching this on the live stream, if you're watching Bitcoin Magazine, shout out Bitcoin Magazine. If you're watching their channel, you're probably a Bitcoiner, but for anyone that isn't yet a Bitcoiner, like, this is the most scarce asset on earth. And so you're going to do whatever it takes to make Bitcoin and to hold it forever and ever.
absolutely. And you know, Megs, you make a beautiful point about the way that Bitcoin mining incentivizes infrastructure build out, particularly in Africa. And in Texas, we've been trying to help the legislators understand this because, you know, there's a lot of Bitcoin mining in Texas. There's a lot of positive energy behind it, but there's also some questions because people always push back and they say, well, if you're using that much power, then clearly you're making my energy bills go up, right? So, but the thing is, the only way to have a stronger, more robust grid is to invest in infrastructure. But if there's no way to get a return on investment, then you're not going to invest in infrastructure. So when a storm comes, there's not enough power. And so what the Bitcoin miners do by coming in and buying up all that cheap power in the middle of nowhere that they can't get to market is they're paying for more infrastructure to be built out, bringing costs lower, especially during storms, ironically enough, because Bitcoin mining, unlike AI, right, which you can't go down if you're using AI because then your project goes away. So they're never going to shut off. But Bitcoin mining, they can shut off in an instant. It doesn't harm their product. They can come back online pretty quickly. So when there's a storm that comes, all the Bitcoin miners shut off. And then there's that much more power pushed back to the grid in times of emergency. Price goes down. More and more infrastructure is built up. More power for the next emergency.
Think of it as a virtual power plant. If you have a mine that's like 500 megawatts, right? It shuts down. It's like you have a power plant of that 500 megawatts that is suddenly available for hospitals, for schools during the power storms, and I think it's pretty beautiful. And shifting around. There we go. We're smushing together.
Come a little closer.
Hello. This is one of the things I love about the Bitcoin space is the people are so interesting, especially the women, because there's not as much of us around, and so it is so fun. So we're actually friends as well as co-panelists.
Yeah, we're staying together.
So let's bring it back a little bit more local.
Yeah.
California. So California does tend to have higher electricity prices than, for example, Texas.
Yes.
Yes. How do you think Bitcoin mining could fit into a state like California?
So I have some friends up in Northern California, and we've been trying to talk to the city about perhaps using their hydropower because, you know, Shasta Dam is up there. And it would be so easy to just put a little more water through, mine Bitcoin, and then maybe step back from government subsidies or, you know, supplement schools or roads or what have you. So helping politicians and municipalities think through how their wasted resources could be used to benefit the city.
Oh, right. And I think, you know, we all talk about how inflation is impacting us at the grocery store or wherever, but it's really impacting our cities also. And if if you're having a sleepless night, you want to go back and watch the Santa Monica City Council meeting where Mags and I and some others went before the City Council to kind of pitch actually the office here in Santa Monica. You will notice that the city controller, the treasurer, gave his report, and they are struggling a little bit. And they talked about, you know, taking out bus stops and stopping services for certain things, and maybe closing a park and don't quote me on the details, but go back and watch. There was a lot of thought to we need to shrink the city services to the residents, and that's not what we want. We want a place that's very energy abundant. We want there to be an abundance and low cost of living, etc. And so, you know, I was kind of harassing Lana Negretti, the vice mayor, today about Santa Monica holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. More so that I just wanted her to, I wanted to surface the question. I know that they're not, they're doing this very cautious, exploratory, you know, kind of what is it, socializing it with the residents, which is absolutely the answer. But the city engineers, the pension, you know, financial engineers are going to have to redo their plumbing so that they can all hold Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
So another area where I think Bitcoin mining fits in very well with California is when I worked on carbon policy, we would always look to California, like what is California doing on carbon reductions, right? They have certain mandates to lower greenhouse gas emissions. One of the big areas of emissions are landfills, right? They release methane, which is 84 times more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, right? They have sewer plants also release methane. I'm not sure too much about farmlands myself, but farms are another source of methane. And so that methane can be captured, and that infrastructure can be subsidized by Bitcoin mining. So when you capture it, you can then burn methane, it's natural gas, for power and power miners. So I think it's usually, when a carbon mandate goes out, it's usually the businesses that bear the costs of that carbon reduction, and then sometimes it gets passed on to the consumer. So for example, for a landfill, it would be the tipping fees, right? And so now you are helping the, let's say, landfill owner find a way to kind of monetize. He has to put in this carbon reduction plan of capturing the gas. Typically, it would just be flared, like in the oil and gas industry. But no, now suddenly you can not only, you're not flaring, you're flaring it to power miners and make a return. So I think it's actually helping lower emissions, and it's a good way to feed in, how California fits in. It's like that dichotomy. Everyone thinks oh my God, it's killing the planet. No, it's actually helping lower those GHGs and below, it's carbon negative projects.
Yeah, someone came up to me yesterday. By the way, shout out Swan Bitcoin. They hosted an incredible event yesterday to a packed house. I know, right? Shout out Swan. Someone came up to me at that event and told me that they're working with a dairy farm. And at the dairy farm, they are going to be mining Bitcoin. Think about how incredible that is. And it's a Bitcoin miner doing a partnership. So there's no capital expenditure for the dairy farm. The Bitcoin miner is willing to come in and put that infrastructure in place and manage that side of the operation. But, depending on how you structure a contract, and Christine is an expert in these type of arrangements, that dairy farmer can really begin to benefit if he so chooses to hold Bitcoin.
And the truth is, I think that is the future of Bitcoin mining, because in the past, in Texas, we've had the capacity to get some really cheap power that's on grid, maybe 4 cents, 5 cents a kilowatt hour power. But moving forward, AI is sucking up every bit of on-grid power they can get. And so I think those days of low on-grid power for miners are coming to an end. And so Bitcoin miners then are going to be forced more to these creative solutions, like the methane from dairy farms, like the methane from landfills, like solar, like flared. So California, I think, could be very much a part of the future, because there's so many resources here, so much solar, so much wind.
And California as well. So I'm from British Columbia, which very left as well. And so there's these mandates in our states and provinces, to increase electrification, right? Because we are transitioning from fossil fuels towards electric, which tends to be more renewable, right? The cool thing about a Bitcoin miner is it's also called a Bitcoin heater, because basically Bitcoin miners make 2 outputs. 1, Bitcoin. 2, heat. I've sat in a room, I've mined Bitcoin, and it has heated my room. And the crazy thing is, there's some incredible, plebs, we're not talking industrial scale now, miners that are converting their whole houses. They're linking all the pipes to the heating output, and it's heating their homes and also subsidizing their, electricity bill. But on sort of a bigger scale, there are projects, like district heating projects, whether in Europe, there's a project in North Vancouver that is also doing that. So district heating, so you're fuel switching from traditionally natural gas, sometimes propane, towards, renewable energy grid. So I think that's another kind of area where it's a roundabout way of electrifying heating, space heating, home heating, and industrial heating. Because there's a few companies that we have some mangoes over there, but there's a company that's actually drying mangoes from miner heat and selling them. It's just crazy. And in Africa, there's also cocoa beans that are being dried, so that so they're making the chocolate there and retaining most of the earnings versus sending them to Switzerland or France to actually make the chocolate there. They're making it locally. So I think there's some beautiful stories once you really start to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I think you can really look to very clean countries, also like Norway, where they had a huge presence of Bitcoin miners. They're in the process of kicking them out. I know because I'm working with one of them. when those miners shut down, the power prices went up in Norway for the residents 21%.
I thought it was 30.
Wow.
It was high. It was a significant chunk.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, you know, one of the problems too, I can't remember which Scandinavian country it was, but they had this new nuclear resource. And nuclear is meant to stay on. So it drives costs down when you've got nuclear. But the problem is the grid has to stay at 60 hertz. And they have all this wind. And so when the wind would blow, it would surge the power in the grid. So they found themselves having to turn off the nuclear, which damages the product. And so thinking through the way that you can use some of those renewables to mine Bitcoin because they're more intermittent, and then save resources like nuclear, which is more dependable for grid, and that, again, counterintuitively lowers people's cost of power.
So I mentioned stories and favorite stories. Do you guys have a favorite Bitcoin mining story or project that you want to highlight? I can start while you think about yours. So my favorite Bitcoin mining story is Virunga National Park. So this is in the Congo. There is a national park there that has gorillas, and they have park rangers that protect the gorillas. This park has historically been funded by tourism. Only 1% of the park's budget was actually government. It's all been tourism. When COVID hit, tourism absolutely died. And it's still very unsafe now to visit because gangs have moved in and they're quite violent. Like, people die. The mining companies, let me get out of myself. So the park director actually reached out to mining companies in like 2019, and he had the foresight to say, hey, let's try Bitcoin mining because there is a renewable energy source. It's run-of-the-mill hydro, and we can mine Bitcoin. And so they're currently earning $150,000 per month in Bitcoin, and that saved the park to be able to provide for the park rangers during COVID, now when there's no tourism. And it's basically Bitcoin miners are saving gorillas right now. Like, it's such a beautiful, good news story that needs to be told more.
Does she think that we're going to be able to top that? I mean, what can compare to saving gorilla, really? I mean, I will just, again, I gave them a shout out yesterday, but shout out Gridless.
Yes.
In Africa. I mean, they really are electrifying places where there was no electrical power. And I actually heard that even in the major cities that could be 4 hours from these sites, now that these sites are up and running, these sites have more reliable power than the major cities. So people are literally moving out of the cities to be in these areas that were completely built by Bitcoin miners. So shout out our friends at Gridless in Africa.
Oh man, I was gonna talk about Gridless too.
All right.
But I will say, so if I could step back a little more broad, Bitcoin in general, but also mining. I had the privilege of going down to El Salvador earlier this year for the halving party, and I got to visit Bitcoin Beach and talk to the people there. And just the hope and the entrepreneurialism in that country after what President Bukele has done, not only legalizing Bitcoin as legal tender, but also cleaning it up so the gangs don't run the country anymore and people aren't just scared in their houses, locked down all the time. And just watching, we stayed at a hotel and it had Bitcoin everywhere. It was a brand new hotel in the area. And just the hope that is there in that country. I was talking to Mike Peterson, who is building, he was the one that helped found Bitcoin Beach, and he's building a place there for people to gather, and he's paying people in Bitcoin, and they held their Bitcoin, and it went up a lot, and so now they're telling their friends about working there. And so just the hope that I see in that country, Bitcoin in general, and Bukele in general, but also the way they're using their volcanoes to mine Bitcoin. That was one thing that the IMF was not very happy with them moving away or making Bitcoin legal tender, but now they're actually going to be paying off all their debts, and all because of what Bitcoin's been able to do for their country.
Well, yeah, and also I was just having a conversation a few minutes ago with a business owner here in Santa Monica, like a 52-year-old family business, and they were talking about offering Bitcoin as salary or offering to have part of an employee's salary distributed to them in Bitcoin at the employee's choice. And they were saying this is really allowing them to bring in a different type of a worker And it's a really thoughtful way for a business to attract talent, right? If you're a Bitcoiner.
It's interesting because it incentivizes a different way of living, right? So the whole dilemma of the Bitcoin pizza, right? So the first Bitcoin transaction was a guy who spent $10,000 on 2 pizzas. Well, now what is that Bitcoin worth today?
A lot.
And so, like you say, workers, different kind of workers, where you're thinking about, do I buy this coffee? Do I spend this money on this, or do I put it away? Do I have couches and chairs?
I have friends who have socks that they paid 5 Bitcoin for a pair of socks
Oh my
that are
God.
regretting it now.
Right. Yeah, I'm still going to buy coffee no matter if I have to pay dirty fiat or Bitcoin.
Well, agreed,
Yeah.
100%. But
Especially-
you spend it on I do. But the point is,
Yeah.
when you put it away, when you spend $5 a week on a little bit of Bitcoin put away, and it builds over time rather than deflates in value, it incentivizes finding more places to pull money out of the couch and invest it.
So you mentioned El Salvador mining Bitcoin. Like, this is a nation state mining Bitcoin. We're in that era where nation states are getting in. Can you guys talk a little bit more about why nation states are mining Bitcoin and which nation states are mining Bitcoin that we know of?
I don't know if many of them would tell us if they are. I suspect Russia is. I wouldn't be surprised if we are.
They told us they are recently. They made the announcement. They actually made the announcement that they're mining one. We have like a superstar in the audience, you guys. I won't dox her. Talk about an expert in Bitcoin mining. Russia disclosed that they mined 1 out of every 5 Bitcoin in 2023.
Wild.
Of course they did. They're the second largest producer of natural gas in the world, and we told them that they couldn't sell their natural gas into the dollarized system.
And what about when China kicked all the miners out, and yet were they still mining? Because I think
There was
the Three
underground,
Gorges-
yeah.
The Three Gorges Dam could mine like 7 times what the Bitcoin network does. So, but the moment that they admit that they're doing it, then the race is on to everyone to buy in. So they're going to keep it quiet, which is true. Actually, I'm sure I believe a lot of the publicly traded oil and gas companies, they're all talking about it. They're doing it on the sly, but nobody wants to admit it.
And Bhutan has been mining Bitcoin since 2019. Wow. That's pretty insane. So right now, the smaller countries are disclosing it.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger ones are still kind of staying silent, but I think it is definitely a trend that we're going to see more of. And there are some countries in sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East. So they're not exactly like the country, but it is the sovereign wealth of the nation that is participating in Bitcoin mining projects. So I think that's just going to trend up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, at the nation state level, a lot of people that are possibly listening listened to Bob Burnett's talk yesterday at the Swan Bitcoin event, which was sold out. But he's also done a lot of podcasts about how nation states will need this block space in order to process financial transactions. And so in order to have basically security that you can use the financial system of the future, you need block space. And so if you're going to need block space, you're
And you
gonna
need mining
miners.
pools to make sure too that those transactions get put into the block. And so it's really interesting. You'll have, because El Salvador launched its own mining pool too, right?
Lava pool.
Yeah, lava pool. So, all right, let's close it off again back to Santa Monica. So when we spoke in front of the Bitcoin, sorry, not the Bitcoin. When we spoke in front of Santa Monica City Hall, there was 4 sort of objectives of the Santa Monica Bitcoin office, and one of them was to explore the city's renewable resources for the potential to mine Bitcoin in Santa Monica, because the city has some assets, whether they're wind or solar on the roofs. So how can Santa Monica sort of embrace Bitcoin in a way that's still fiscally sound, where they're not buying Bitcoin if they're not ready?
Well, they are, right? I mean, they're leading the way. I know for my home city, Fort Worth, they were the first to mine Bitcoin. And basically, they had some ASICs donated to them, and they turned them on. But the number of eyes on Fort Worth, they were so pleased. Just the media impressions that they got from that. So even just talking about it, they lit up the pier with the Bitcoin symbol. they're already spreading the good news, so to speak.
Yeah, I just want to shout out Maddie V. Parker, the mayor of Fort Worth, like another just badass female mayor. Leading.
The lady's leading the charge here.
Yeah, kinda.
Awesome. Well, I think we
All right, guys, this
are
was so fun.
calling
Again,
it,
shout out to
but
Bitcoin
awesome.
Magazine. Thank you for coming out here to support Don Bay, Proof of Workforce, Lana Negrete, the vice mayor, who's really helping get this message out. Thank you, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Oh, yeah.
Great job. Dom.
Okay, everyone watching at home and everyone here at Bitcoin Peer to Peer, we're at our 3 p.m. panel titled, How Can Bitcoin Work in the State of California? I am joined with Vice Mayor Lana Negrete, who is the sponsor of the Bitcoin office, the Santa Monica Bitcoin office, as well as Margot Paez, who is a fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute and a local Angelino. So great to have you all.
Thank you.
And for those at home, we will be having join us shortly here State Senator Ben Allen, who is running just behind right now from another engagement from traffic, which ultimately falls under his watch anyway, because he controls the state. So we'll talk about that when the time comes. Lana, Margot, thank you so much for being here. So excited to talk about Bitcoin in California.
Very excited. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here. It's still going. I'm glad to still see people milling around. So this is awesome for a Friday afternoon on the 1200 block. This is more people than we ever have during this time of day. So thank you for everyone who has come, and thank you for everyone who's tuning in.
Yeah, go Dodgers. Yeah, World Series.
I'm from Northern California,
No,
so I'm gonna
Dodgers.
not weigh in here.
Dodgers.
Margot, let's get right to it, because when we were on a panel earlier about Santa Monica Bitcoin office, we asked Lana some of the complaints that come her way from emails. And one of the most common ones that she received was that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. It uses too much energy. It's a common one we hear. With you, I think you're getting your PhD in climate, as like a physicist in climate work.
Yeah, so I started my PhD in the physics department, and I switched to civil engineering to focus on climate-related impacts, and that morphed into looking at the environmental side and energy use of Bitcoin mining. So that's my thesis right now. Yeah.
So very well versed, and I would say can handle this, because I try to talk to Lana about this stuff, and I give her my version of Bitcoin and renewable, and she's like, "Okay, Dom, you're a firefighter. Like, thanks, that sounds great, but like, I'm still not sold." So maybe you can start, being that this is how can Bitcoin work in California, and being that climate and sustainability and renewable energy are one of the biggest priorities, despite actually that initiative being cut by Governor Gavin Newsom due to the deficit. But they're trying, there's even a ballot measure, I think it's Prop 4, which is to re-engage that funding towards the climate initiatives. But if you could start on your kind of overview of Bitcoin and the environment and what you respond to when people say it's a waste of energy and bad for the environment.
Right, so obviously, first of all, we are in a climate emergency. We are at risk of running out of time to handle what we need to handle in terms of decarbonization. How's that? Okay, in terms of decarbonization. And we really need the governor to really focus on that. And Bitcoin mining, you know, it's not a bad technology, it's not a good technology. It's just a technology, it really depends on how you apply it, but it's got unique incentives that are different from other type of energy off-takers, and that allows it to be placed in really unique positions, especially with respect to the renewable energy transition and making use in innovative ways of wasted gas or wasted energy. And I think that's something that we don't really realize, especially those of us who are in the climate movement, which I consider myself to be one of those people. I participated in Fridays for Future and with Extinction Rebellion. So I was very and am still very committed to solving the climate crisis. I think the issue with California is, right, we have a lot of renewable energy. We have been, here in the state, we have been leaders in terms of bringing on more solar and wind and also batteries. But the problem is that when the sun is shining or when the wind is blowing, that's when the power is generated. And our electrical grids were not designed to operate like that before. And it's honestly something that politicians didn't realize, I think, either going into this. And so we have to have solutions to off-take that excess power, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to continue to monetize the build out of wind and solar, which we really need to do. And we can actually do things with Bitcoin mining on the grid, for example, that could potentially reduce our reliance on natural gas peaker plants, which I think is really fantastic, because those peaker plants, you know, they when they ramp on and off, they produce a lot of CO2. A lot of greenhouse gases in general. So that's something we really want to reduce, and it's an easy way to do it, and it's a cost-effective way to do that. The type of service that Bitcoin mining provides to the electrical grid is actually very cheap in comparison to keeping these peaker plants. So that's a viable solution. And then, of course, you know, California is the agricultural center of the United States. I mean, we grow so much livestock here, especially in Central Valley in Northern California. You're driving up the 5, you see all these cows, right?
Smell it.
It smells awful.
I smell it.
Yep. You pull off, and you again go to one of those steakhouses, you know, right? You know what I'm talking about. So
the good bread rolls.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm getting hungry, but look, the point is that there's a lot of waste, like livestock waste, that can be utilized it as a renewable energy source, and we can use that to power Bitcoin miners. And so we can incentivize actually the cleanup of that waste, because I mean, you know, the way that that waste is handled is that they like dig these ditches, and it's just like filled with water and animal waste, and it's kind of gross, and that can seep into the water, into the soil, and it's contaminating. And so we want to find like environmentally friendly ways to deal with that. And this is one potential way, because you can then take that and put into a digester and then turn that into methane basically. And then you can use that to run these Bitcoin miners. And why does this work? Why with Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin's incentive makes it possible. And by incentive, I mean it's just the way the network works and how these Bitcoin miners are paid to do what they do. It's very competitive, and they have to get the cheapest electricity possible. So these are one couple of ways in which Bitcoin mining can actually help us tackle some of our environmental and climate goals. And I think one last thing is that in the state of California, the way our electrical grid works is it's not really designed to incentivize this type of data center, which is what Bitcoin miners are. They're a type of data center. So in order to do that, we actually do need legislators to actively work on adjusting the price mechanism, make like time, you want like spot prices, you want like 5-minute interval pricing, so that Bitcoin miners can actually be incentivized to power off and be able to engage at these wholesale cheaper electricity prices. And we don't have that set up here in California just yet, but moving towards a model like Texas, could actually change that and bring in Bitcoin miners.
You mentioned incentive, and I remember before I got solar, I was so excited because I thought I could sell my solar back to the grid, and that not only was I going to get low-cost electricity, but that I would get money back, right?
Oh my gosh,
and
yes.
California, in the middle of what was one of the greatest solar campaigns around, kind of canceled that, and now that energy just gets dumped into the grid. So I totally hear you on the incentive. One of the things I wanted to talk to Lana about was one of the initiatives for the Santa Monica Bitcoin office was exploring where stranded renewable energy was in the city, and then mining Bitcoin as an educational exercise. Because with a few solar panels on a city facility that is not inhabited over the weekend, we know we're not going to earn a significant profit in Bitcoin. But you can learn. You mentioned Bitcoin's a tool. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about, like, from Lana's point of view, how that would play out. How would the city mine using stranded renewable? There's all kinds of issues about like how to hold the Bitcoin, and I'm learning a lot by talking to the Office of Sustainability.
I don't know that we're at the point where it would be about holding it, but at least that the opportunity to learn how it works, as you just explained. I mean, these are the jobs that are available to our young people. We are very unique in the fact that we are very close and supportive financially to both our local community college and our school district. And I think there's key opportunities there just to teach our young people how that mechanism works, and how we can source stranded energy and how we can use that to mine. In terms of holding it on the balance sheet, I think that's a little bit farther down. But right now we're still in this education process, and that would definitely be a huge part of it. And I can see not just opportunities for job creation, but learning what the blockchain is about, learning about sustainable energy. I mean, we are a sustainable city, and as soon as Senator Van Allen gets here, I'm sorry that he missed all of what you just said. He will further, I think, like to converse with you about, have a conversation with you about that, because I think there's a lot of concern about whether or not mining for Bitcoin is more detrimental to the environment than it is beneficial, than there are any benefits from it. So you eloquently explained it. I think if we had a shorter version to really just an elevator pitch, I know for me, that's the biggest question that I get, or rather the pushback from the community is, how is this beneficial? It's more detrimental to the environment. And I think how you just explained it is, there's an opportunity to find how to use stranded energy. So
here's an interesting elevator pitch, and something I think about with the city is There's some in the city that want to shut down the Santa Monica airport, and I believe the airport is scheduled to get shut down. Is that correct?
2028.
Okay.
Wow.
Huge amount of land, which, you know, somewhat parks, somewhat affordable housing. But when I see a land like a large amount of land like that, I think about energy independence. And I think about the city of Santa Monica way back in its history had the foresight to secure water rights, which is one of the reasons Santa Monica became the prosperous city center it did, is because it had water rights for this city. What would you do with all that land in the airport if you were an advisor to Santa Monica saying, hey, we want to make sure that we have electrical, energy generation, and we want it to be renewable? How would you kind of things that come to your mind, and how would you integrate Bitcoin?
Well, you can place plenty of solar panels on there. A lot of the new solar and wind generation that's coming online is also coming online with batteries. So I think having a mix where you can arbitrage between battery, Bitcoin mining, with your solar and being on the grid, like what are you going to sell to the grid and what are you going to run with Bitcoin? I think that would be an interesting model to pursue, because there's going to be times when the grid doesn't need that extra solar, but you can still monetize it and you can still have that reserve of clean energy there. Something that we think about when we're talking about the sustainability of the electrical grid is what is the CO2 intensity of the generator, the power generator that's going to come on to meet the next load or the next building that needs power or the next user that needs that power. And if we can have wind and solar on reserve or stored in batteries, but then using whatever is excess with Bitcoin mining, we can maybe be able to offset having to have a fossil fuel generator sitting there, bringing that final power generator that meets the next amount of demand. Like, I think that would be very cool, and something that actually I remember talking with a mining company who was trying to do something like that in Illinois. And I think trying to experiment with stuff like that here in California, I think would be really awesome, because California has always been an innovator, leading the country in so many different ways. And I think that it would be just so great to see California leading in this way as well.
Lana mentioned elevator pitches, and when we get to Ben, because Ben's when I'll see him walking down, and we'll start poking fun at him, but he definitely is into environmentalism and climate change and solutions. But what questions do you have, Lana, just as far as how Bitcoin energy use works, the profile, and maybe some resources where people hear that Bitcoin's bad for the environment? How do they know who to trust, who has incentives, and where to find good information?
I was just going to say, you mentioned something to me earlier today when somebody had wrote in a note to me about that, and you said something very simply, which was like, sure, you use energy to turn the lights on in your house, but the reward you get is that you can see when you're in your house. So I think it's also looking at the reward that you get. So sure, there's using energy, but it's what do you get out of it when you use that energy? I think that's one aspect. But one question I had for you was just listening to you talk about other states and how other people are already moving on this. What do you think is the holdup in California?
Well, obviously one is the environmental concern, I think. And then two is the way that our electrical grid is structured. And you mentioned the issue with, putting in rooftop solar, and that was such a big initiative in California. And then, it turned out the net metering wasn't that great of a deal for the residential consumer or provider of their excess power. And then the big solar industry basically went to the governor of California and to the legislators and advocated to basically get rid of even that little bit of net metering that exists. They didn't want to compete. Like the electrical industry, the utilities don't want to compete in that way with the residential providers of solar. So we have some challenges here that go beyond Bitcoin, I think. But I think fundamentally it is that most people in liberal states like California have really bought into the narrative that Bitcoin is melting the planet, literally. And this is because of really bad research on Bitcoin mining. that was not really peer reviewed either, but it happened to be published in academic literature, journals, and research done by undergraduates, research done by a Dutch economist. That's who's been leading in the narrative like this, and so that has been out.
I did some research for it too. Me and Lana might have spun up some research and just told us fill something out. No.
Yeah, I mean, it was not quality research, but it grabbed headlines. And so part of my work, both as an academic and as a fellow at BPI, the Bitcoin Policy Institute, is to really combat this misinformation, this misunderstanding, and to try to reach people and educate them and show them that Bitcoin mining is actually really no more harmful than any other data center that's out there or any other energy intensive consumer. It really depends on how you incentivize the location and the siting of these facilities and what the mix of the electrical grid is where you do that. But if you can provide a way for them to power on and off with pricing that is changing, every few minutes, and you can do it in an area where electricity costs are cheap, which is going to be where clean energy in general is located, I think there's a real opportunity there. But the challenge is really the education part and getting past these deep-rooted myths about Bitcoin mining.
Speaking of myths, we were doing some skeet shooting of myths. Who here has heard that Bitcoin uses more energy than the whole country of Argentina? Anyone hear that? Phil from Riots heard it. Garrett's heard it, firefighter. Anyone else heard that frequently? Well, what do you say when you hear that headline get pushed? Which, I have my thoughts on it, but I'd be more curious on yours.
Look, most industrial scale energy users use more than most countries in the world. If you look and you plot the energy use of all of the major countries, nothing compares to the United States, China, and India. China is leading, I think, still. And so what is lacking when we talk about this is context. So even if it's true, it doesn't really say a lot, because in the context of energy use of industries around the world, it's not a big deal. We have plenty of energy, actually. And that's something that we don't understand is we have a lot of energy, and we waste a lot of energy. And when you get to that point and you realize that, then you're not as afraid when you hear a statistic like that. Numbers don't lie, but anybody can take a statistic and give you an interpretation that meets their agenda, right? And so that's what happens with stuff like that.
Me and Phil talk about all the time. What about all the car dealerships where the lights stay on and you're driving down, in the valley and the lights are blaring? I don't know how much electricity that uses, but anyone here buying cars at like 11 p.m. at night? But we don't hear about that waste. So I think as people learn the value of Bitcoin and the fact that energy required to maintain the network does have an incredible value, because you don't need to rely on a third party and you know that your transactions are secure. That's a first step into getting over this whole headline about, using more than a whole country. What about, you mentioned about creative ways to reduce waste, and for a city, maybe not Santa Monica. I know Santa Monica has a landfill, but it doesn't generate that much as far as, like gas and all that thing. But what are you seeing in the space, or what are some ideas in Santa Monica where sustainability comes into play and maybe Bitcoin can somehow? I've heard all stuff from the water heaters that are powered by Bitcoin miners to landfill mining to all kind of tires, right? Like old tire centers. What are some things you're hearing about, and what are some things you are curious about at the city level?
Well, I'm curious to hear from you as an expert, like what you're seeing other communities do. And I don't know what homework you've done on Santa Monica and where you see an opportunity for us, because we do want to lead in sustainability and continue to. We take great pride in that. So I would love to hear from you.
So obviously heat is a really cool example, because you're producing Bitcoin and these machines are hot. You put your laptop on your lap and it feels hot, right? Or your phone, if you put it on your hand for long enough, it feels hot. So every machine, every computer out there is generating heat, waste heat. And when you have these operations at scale where you have thousands of machines, computers running, that's a lot of heat that you're generating. If you ever walk into a Bitcoin mining facility that is just air cooled, I mean, it feels like being in Palm Springs, you know, in the summertime. It's dry, it's hot. But you can capture that heat and you can reuse it. So it's got a second life. So it's like, you know, it's basically energy. It's just heat. Instead, you took this energy that was generated, let's say, by a solar farm, you turned that into electricity, you ran it through these computers, but there's still a certain amount of energy left. And so now you can then capture the remaining energy as heat and use it. And some really cool examples that I've seen are, one was using the heat to run a shrimp farm. That was a really cool example, and I think Marathon was doing this experiment. And I'd love to see things like that because there's a lot of food growth that requires heat. And I think a big part of sustainability is independence, food independence, resilience, growing your food locally. And I would love to see Los Angeles, Santa Monica really find innovative ways to grow our food locally and sustainably because climate change is a global issue, and our food industry is global, and transporting food across oceans and across countries, it requires a lot of gas, a lot of fossil fuels, and transportation is a challenge at times to decarbonize compared to the electrical grid. So the more that we can put onto the electrical grid and operate locally, I think that would be great. So, you know, reusing that heat would be one possibility. You know, on the municipal waste scale, I mean, you can do this at very small scales. You can do like, you know, less than 1 megawatt site, landfill site, and run, you know, a couple hundred Bitcoin miners. That's totally possible. And I know of a company that's based in Berkeley, California, that's been trying to do something like that. They're called Vespeed. I'm not sure where they're at these days. They're a startup, of course, so it's challenging. But there's a guy named Daniel Batten who works a lot on the landfill side, really trying to advocate for that and try to bring in, you know, real capital to jumpstart this. So I think that's also really important. I think it would be phenomenal if the expenses were lined up the right way to see cities mining Bitcoin on their waste, municipal waste, and then investing that Bitcoin back into the city, back into community organizations. You know, I think that's really important. Let's take that money and reinvest it in the community. And I think that's something that people in Southern California and Santa Monica and Los Angeles, I think that's something we really value, is really investing in our communities.
That's something I can see us implementing. I think people are tired of, we got an election coming up in November. There's a lot of proposals to tax people in different ways, to put money in our general fund for basic services. We're still suffering a bounce back from COVID and just bringing back some of those basic services, some of which are activities for the community at our parks or after school activities or even crossing guards. So something like that where we could think of innovative ways that don't tax the community, but rather create an opportunity for us to fund community benefits.
I know.
Should we call Ben on the phone?
We're gonna call Ben, and y'all have to make sure all the voters out here, Ben gets no pass. So when we get here, we'll hit him up. But I wanted to switch before he comes here to talk about climate. I wanted to talk a little bit about financial literacy because, and we'll dive more into it. But at the local level and at the state level, Bitcoin has been so powerful as a tool for financial literacy. And you mentioned just using it as a tool. When you're talking about renewable mining, what have you experienced in your work as far as Bitcoin as a tool for financial literacy?
I mean, it's the most important tool for financial literacy. I mean, there's nothing out there that opens your eyes to how our economic system works and how money works. We are just so uneducated on finance. And I'm a product of the Los Angeles school system and the public education system, and it's not something that we're taught here. And I think it's really I think it would be so cool to be able to have some kind of elective in high school where kids are learning about Bitcoin and learning about money, the history of money, because you can't really appreciate Bitcoin until you start understanding that history. And I mean, what have I seen is just mostly, I think the biggest impact for me has been what's going on in the global south in terms of the financial empowerment that's there through Bitcoin. There's people that are trying to build circular economies in places where financial freedom is very difficult. There's dictators, there's hyperinflation, and I've had the opportunity to meet some really amazing people who and dissidents who have used Bitcoin to survive incredible hardship in these parts of the world. So it really is a democratic money. It is empowering, and I think if we really want to appreciate what Bitcoin mining can do, we have to appreciate that first.
Looks like we got Ben right here. We're just going to get it mic'd up. Made it all the way from Palos Verdes.
Oh, that's bad. That's bad, Travis.
Yeah. We got to get him a mic, get him a little patched in for those at home. Ben, we were just talking. We basically solved all of California's problems right before you got here. But do we have an extra mic? I'm not hearing that. Okay. We're gonna jump right into it. Yeah, awesome. And thank you so much for coming.
I'm happy to be here, and I do apologize for the late start. The 405 was a total disaster today. So
we got an extra mic. Okay, yeah. So we pass it. We're just gonna pass it down. Okay, that one goes to Lana. We're doing a little shuffle down here.
Yours.
What do you think of the desk? Did you see the desk? I wanted to start off by telling you that this news desk has a fan in the front, and it's spinning. Do you all see the desk? Is it spinning? It's not. But when the wind kicks up, has it been spinning? That's because it's not plugged in, Ben. So this is 100% renewable power mining desk. So number one, you're in a safe spot. And let me get a round of applause for Ben being here from everyone, our California State Senators. So
nice to meet you,
Margot, who is a fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute, and she's getting her PhD right now as a climate physicist. So Ben has met we're in good company. Lana needs no introduction, and California State Senator Ben Allen, no intro. But I wanted to start off outside of Bitcoin by just asking you, what in your opinion is standing in between California and its goal of being 100% renewable by 2045?
Great question. Oh my gosh. So obviously so much of it, I know you've all been discussing these energy issues for quite some time. I mean, a lot of it comes down to basic logistics and infrastructure. Can we ramp up a charging infrastructure within the time we need? Can we generate the kind of geothermal and wind and hydropower? Can we generate the amount of solar power we need? And then can we figure out a way to store? Can we figure out a way to really build a resilient grid? And then, of course, we're also fighting against folks that don't want to see the transition, who don't want to make it easy. We're going to make it harder politically, economically, etc. And so it's a kind of a mix of, I think it's primarily infrastructural, but there's a political component to this too.
For sure. I'll go over to Margot, who before you were here was talking a little bit how actually California's grid wasn't designed for Bitcoin mining necessarily, right? And so there's an issue there. But in your opinion, we hear a lot about the battery power lagging, of course, the U-shaped graph, right, which the peak of solar and wind does not match the demand. And when that energy gets dumped back into the grid, it actually costs people more money for their electricity bills. Maybe you can kind of, intro some of the ideas you mentioned before as far as how Bitcoin could fit into that equation.
Right. So I guess, as I said before, Bitcoin is a really unique, flexible load. It provides the ability to meet demand, to meet the supply where it is, because before it was about supply meeting demand. And now it's about demand meeting supply as a way to manage the electrical grid. And that's because wind and solar only produce power when it's sunny or when it's windy. So a very cost-effective way to do this is to have loads that can power on or shift their workloads to different times of day. And Bitcoin miners are in a unique position to do this of any other type of data center because the network protocol provides a very difficult price incentive in the sense that it's very competitive to mine Bitcoin, and you have to constantly be looking for the most efficient way to operate your facility. So if you're the only real dial that you can tune is on the electricity cost, you're going to power down if the price of electricity starts to go high. And so turns out to be a very powerful incentive. And it's one that is lacking amongst data centers in general, especially AI, which is extraordinarily profitable in comparison to Bitcoin miners. So you have an opportunity to actually create policy and to create market incentives that could potentially bring in Bitcoin miners into the state of California so that they are operating at times when there's excess wind and solar and powering down during times when demand is high. And so what that does is almost like being a virtual power plant. And you can then return that power by having the Bitcoin miners power off. And you can potentially avoid having to bring on more costly peaker plants, which are going to ultimately be natural gas. So it allows you to do a number of things in terms of trying to decarbonize the electrical grid. But the challenge is really making sure that you have the right price incentive, the right marketplace to bring in those type of data centers.
And I don't know enough about mining, but would the miners be comfortable with just mining at certain days, certain times of the day?
Yes.
Turning off for days on end?
Yes.
So okay.
Like our news desk, right? Are the fans spinning right now? Yes, because the wind is blowing, but it doesn't spin. We're not mining with no wind. Okay, so
let me give you an example in the state of Georgia. So we have a number of Bitcoin miners in Georgia, and I'm a PhD candidate at Georgia Tech. So I've collected data from a number of companies in the Bitcoin mining industry in terms of their energy consumption use. And it's really striking how these facilities, these data centers, are able to adapt to the price structures in which they're located.
You just program them to be responsive to the prices.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in particular in Georgia, what you see is a very predictable ramping down of power during peak hour and ramping up during off-peak time. And then in other places, like in Texas, you might see a mix of different types of structures in terms of how they're regulating their power use.
Yeah.
But the primary incentive is the cost of the electricity, and then also, having a friendly environment where they're not afraid that they're going to be banned the next day is also really important. But the bottom line is that it is the price that is the incentive, and it's the electricity price itself.
And Ben, the state provides incentives already for renewable generation, right? Does the state provide any incentives for stranded renewable usage right now? And to that also, Margot, how come Google can't choose to, tap into that stranded renewable and just shut off their operation?
So they have very high reliability requirements. They have different tiers of reliability, and it's like 99.99997%, And what that means is that if they don't have backup generators or redundancy built in where they can move their workloads to data center in a different region, they're not going to be able to power down as effectively. The reality, and you should know this as a politician, the reality is that they do have the capability to do this, but the price incentive is not there. Especially now with AI in particular, you're seeing this push to capture as much power as possible. And that is coming at a cost of flexibility. So they're looking for nuclear power plants in particular because it is a constant generator of power because they need that reliability. So this is one of the challenges that you're going to face and what other politicians are going to face and other electrical grids are going to face is that how are you going to manage all of that? And now, Bitcoin miners in general are not that profitable. So they're well more adapted to providing that flexibility, to be that flexible load that can help you balance the grid. And of course, there's always caveats, because it's tied to the price of Bitcoin. But in general, it's the comparison is just so many times more profitable to have an AI facility, AI data center.
And also, I think the mining community is so much more grassroots, right? When you're talking AI, you're typically talking to a big Google. You can negotiate between Southern California Edison or CalISO and Google and say, we'll incentivize you to ramp up your electricity usage during times of a lot of power being on the grid. Whereas we don't have a system in place right now to incentivize individual use. I think partly because we're really not able to tweak it. And yet, if we could create a system that would allow people to ramp up quickly and the grid would feel comfortable knowing exactly what the response is going to be and how that it's done reliably, I could see that potentially working.
That's an interesting observation because we hear the Bitcoin community often that Bitcoin is too centralized and not grassroots enough. And we have pushes to basically continue to protect the decentralization of Bitcoin mining. One of the largest public miners, Marathon, I believe is held by CalPERS, the pension. They hold shares of Marathon. And so when I see that, I think of obvious partners where it's like, hey, we're already, and Marathon, unlike some other miners, I think they have a mixed use of renewable. Is Marathon all renewable? They're a mix, right, of like natural gas and renewable. A company like CleanSpark is 100% renewable, right? They only mine with renewable energy.
They use a lot of nuclear, and they also use renewable energy certificates to offset any other.
Well, do you guys know
CO2.
if they're engaging in these conversations with Edison, PG&E, ISO?
I have a feeling may not be a lot of conversation happening here in California, but certainly in other parts of the country, these conversations are happening.
I think many have kind of thrown in the towel that I've talked to because, number one, the cost of electricity is extremely high.
Yeah.
And the government hasn't shown any signs of willing to incentivize it to a point where they can just do better than break even. And I think a lot of that, like Lana was talking about earlier, we talked about some of the most common emails she gets about the Bitcoin office. And there is this, and look, we saw I'm sure in you coming here today, there will be people that go, how could you speak at, a Bitcoin event when Bitcoin's so bad for the environment, the big bad monster, it's this energy. And so I think they see that and go, unless there's someone willing to simply engage in let's just have an open-minded conversation, they don't see the value in investing the time. But that, I think, is one of the things we want to change here is allowing, we're not saying we're going to mine Bitcoin in California, but what would it look like and crazy? What if it could help California reach its renewable goals faster or on target with what it is planning to, needs to hit by 2045?
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to capture the excess electricity produced, on a hot, on a bright sunny day. That's a great idea. I mean, so I'm certainly all ears about that. I think what we're all touching upon is a real problem right now with our electricity pricing system, which is where, and Severin Bornstein, a professor at UC Berkeley, who got very involved in the gas pricing conversation as well, brilliant man. I recommend folks check him out. But Severin writes extensively about how one of the problems is we basically put a lot of the cost of electrification onto electric bills, which is such a disincentive for the use of electricity, which we're trying to get people to do. We're trying to wean them off of fossil fuels, move on to electricity with a mind toward ultimately sourcing almost all of our electricity from renewable sources. So we need a broader rethink of the way we structure the cost of the electrification system that we're undergoing right now as part of our climate efforts. And certainly, I appreciate. I mean, it's interesting for me. When you first asked me about this, I didn't know there was going to be a whole conversation about energy policy. I think what's going on is you're picking up so much on the pushback because of the energy intensity associated with mining, and trying to help be part of the conversation about energy solutions. And so you're touching upon some of the bigger conversations that are happening right now in Sacramento. But unfortunately, there's so much status quo defense of kind of the old guard energy producers and sources, and it's hard to push through. But it's something that environmentalists are engaged in a very serious way, and maybe you can be part of that conversation. I think it's, we need more hands on deck.
Yeah, I think as we, I have an interesting old tweet I found from the governor, and I'm going to share it because it just shows that Bitcoin adoption is growing, and I think, Ben, like you were saying, is California has the opportunity to shape Bitcoin mining in aligned with its value system, right? Because if California, this big entity, could say, hey, we want to see more renewable mining. So here's the stat. In May of 2014, Gavin Newsom tweeted, thinking about how to make Bitcoin donations a regular thing in politics, thoughts. At that time, the price of Bitcoin was $446 with a market cap of $4.4 billion. Today, it stands at $68,000 with a market cap of $1.4 trillion. Now, forget about the value of Bitcoin. What's behind the value is mining, adoption, transactions, usage, all kinds of adoption. So it's not slowing down. People can mine anywhere around the world. I think California has an opportunity to say, we're going to explore, not necessarily commit, to mining in alignment with our value system, which is renewable energy and achieving our climate goals. That's what I think is so interesting. And I'm curious on your thoughts on the best way for cities and for different individuals to kind of engage in those conversations.
Well, I think that probably, quite frankly, the most effective place to start is to have the biggest miners engaging in conversation directly with the utilities. Because those conversations are happening right now between all the big tech companies with regards to AI generation. And they're working out deals together to say, okay, we will create incentives for you to utilize electricity at times when we have too much electricity on the grid. And so I would just assume that a similar conversation could happen with the miners. And I just think that's probably going to be the best place to start.
I think that could be possible. I think Christine is somewhere around here. She was on the panel earlier. She's with the Texas Blockchain Council. They have all of the big miners in their, I guess, phone book, the contact list. So, that's something that would be very interesting to organize. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, okay, so more conversations, and I think I think one of the things Margot is working so hard on is providing reliable research that supports people in your position like Lana and Ben, so that when people do approach you and say, why are you even talking about this thing? I read that it uses more power than the country of Argentina. I read that it's really so bad for the environment. I think another way that we can be efficient is equipping you all with reliable research to say, look, please look into this and let's talk. We're not going to blindly just support Bitcoin, but surely we have to look at research. And I know Margot's working on a lot of stuff, and that's why Bitcoin Policy Institute was created at DC level. But I think we need more of a presence in California.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a welcome conversation. I will say, writ large, the energy use is so massive that it's hard to think that California's excess electricity production is going to, the problem's going to be solved. But I guess the point is, if Bitcoin's already a thing and the mining's happening, we might as well use it as a way to capture that excess electricity production when we have the excess electricity. But I do think it's not going to solve the criticism that continues to be directed at mining globally, because we're so far. I mean, California is actually so unique in the sense that we do produce too much renewable energy at certain times of the day. There are so few entities that do that. So we're so far from that kind of clean energy future that we all hope for, that I think you're going to continue to receive this kinds of criticism.
Yeah,
writ large.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to.
I know there's the stat that, is it true or false that the majority of mining has shifted towards renewable energy as far as usage, or what have you found in that? Because I think it brings up a good point. Hey, if we got involved in this and shaped the industry, towards renewables, what percentage would that make of overall global mining, and how would that influence it? I mean, the thing that comes to my head is California is a leader. So if California engaged in shaping mining towards renewable, would that then offer examples for other places? I'm not sure, but thoughts on
I mean,
that?
give me a sense. Like if you, I can only imagine. I don't know the data on this, but the amount of the percentage of mining electricity need that could be covered by the excess electricity produced in California on sunny days, it's still got to be a tiny portion.
Do you know how much that excess power is, like in terms of gigawatts?
I mean, this presupposes that
So yeah,
all of it would go to mining, which of course a lot of it doesn't.
no.
But yeah, sorry.
So I mean, look. First of all, to answer your question, if we really don't know what the energy mix is for Bitcoin mining, people can tell you numbers, but it's all, a lot of it is just back of the envelope modeling, estimates, and talking with people in the industry. It's very challenging, but let me just say it's even more challenging to know that about data centers. And so I think something that we need to really understand here is that Bitcoin mining as a protocol is way more transparent than the entire data center industry itself. And I can go through the research very quickly with you, because this is what I do. So every 5 years or so, since early 2000s, we have gotten estimates, models of what the energy use looks like for data centers in the United States. Okay, with Bitcoin mining, we can get an estimate instantaneously on Cambridge University's Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index. This is, the fact that we can do that for Bitcoin mining is part of why there is this concern about its energy use, because it's so transparent. And I think that we really are not appreciating that reality. Because data centers in general are not anywhere as transparent as Bitcoin mining, they're much harder to attack. On the other hand, Google, Microsoft, like these are very big companies who all made promises about the energy transition and decarbonization, and they've all retreated. I mean, Google has done some things, but Microsoft has failed to meet its goals, and everybody is pushing for more power. You may not realize this, but even with the most optimistic projections that I have made for Bitcoin mining's energy use in the US, it does not compare to the projections coming out of Lawrence Berkeley Lab in California in terms of what data center growth is going to look like in the United States going through 2027. So I think we have to remind ourselves that there is a bigger context here. Bitcoin mining is a type of data center. It just has unique properties that other data centers do not have. And there's estimates that that data centers in general may hit 5% of our energy use. And that's significant. And Bitcoin mining is not going to hit that, even in the most optimistic scenario, because there are constraints on how the network works. Now, Bitcoin miners cannot necessarily just go out and buy up a nuclear plant like Microsoft can, but they can provide unique services to the grid that Microsoft will not be as easily able to do. And so I think we have to understand the broader context here, and we have to remember that we're talking about a type of data center, and in that context, Bitcoin mining is honestly insignificant. And it's going to be like that so long as our other computational energy growth continues to happen. And it seems that we are on the cusp of really a massive growth spurt in our energy use when it comes to information technology. So we have to remember the context. And that is the context, is that we're not just seeing growth in Bitcoin mining, we're seeing growth in every aspect of information technology. And we have to meet that somehow. And if Bitcoin miners can potentially incentivize some of that new renewable energy that's going to be brought on that needs an off-taker, then that's a win for our energy transition. And I hope to see that we will have other loads that will be able to do the same thing. But if we are talking about the immediate concerns now about what we have to do about decarbonization, there is only one type of load at that scale that can do this and can do it anywhere, and that is Bitcoin mining. And so
data centers don't have the kind of flexibility? Is that the point you're making? with the risk?
They actually, so data centers technically do have the capability, but they don't have the incentive. Bitcoin miners have the price incentive. Most data centers make a lot more money than what Bitcoin miners make. And so they don't have that incentive to power down. Yeah. So that's like the most unique thing about Bitcoin mining and why it's able to be flexible at all, because it was not designed to be a flexible load. That was not the intention of the design of Bitcoin. The intention was we need to secure the network. We're going to put all this value onto this protocol. How are we going to do that? And here we'll do it through, we'll use energy as a way to secure it. And it just happened like, oh yeah, okay, but it's so competitive. It's almost a near perfect market that's gonna then lead to these next, these second order effects. And that's what we've been talking about here, is these second order effects. They weren't intentional, but it was just a fallout of the design of the protocol. But you don't have that, because with data centers, you have these, these service agreements with these end users, and they have expectations about when they get their product. And in the Bitcoin miners, they are the customer. I build a facility, I put 1,000 Bitcoin miners in there. I'm only serving myself as the company because I'm trying to make that Bitcoin so that I can sell it in the market and then, and have revenue, like have a profit. For a data center, I've got an end user somewhere on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world that's expecting to have whatever computational process is running there to be there when they need it. When am I going to get my cat video on YouTube, right? You have an expectation to meet that end user demand as a data center. And so then that puts pressure to be online. They can be flexible, but it's just the incentive is not there for most data centers right now.
So, Ben, as we kind of push on time, I think this shows that we need good dialogue for sure. And I know that Bitcoiners are committed. Margot's born and raised here, and there's a lot of Bitcoiners that want to at least have the conversation. And so, I applaud you for having this conversation, because I don't know if I've seen dialogue between California state senators or assembly members, because many are supportive of the environment and they're afraid to touch this thing that has this, reputation. But I don't see the harm in having the dialogue to say, let's find out, let's see what this is. I wanted to shift to one topic in California, because I think it was AB 2927, financial literacy required to graduate high school, right? And I think this was unanimously passed. There was one abstention. Governor Newsom introduced it. We talked about financial literacy earlier and how Bitcoin's a tool. And I went through the list of what the items are. And there's, principles of budgeting for independent living, cost of insurance, investing in building wealth, charitable giving, debt. But there wasn't anything on Bitcoin or digital assets on there. And I'm curious for the crowd, who here owns some form of digital asset in some manner? Raise your hand if you own or transact in a digital asset. Okay, so there are people using it. I just think that was something I found interesting, and I was curious, how do we interject or try to provide education along those lines? I saw they had a committee and a commission. I was just curious because I didn't see it on there. But again, the goal of it was to be equipped with knowledge. But if you don't give the people knowledge, and Lana knows this, there was a group of residents out in the Pico neighborhood where someone came in and said, oh, we're selling this coin, and they got duped for a bunch of money. Bitcoin catches the bad rep, even though the thing that was being sold had nothing to do with Bitcoin. But if you provide that education, people can go, wait a minute, I have education. And I know Bonta is doing some of that in the AG's office, right? But what do you see is that, and Lana tie in on the need for financial literacy and the fact that people are going to get engaged, they're going to engage with digital assets one way or the other.
Yeah, I would think that making sure that the financial literacy program keeps people aware of scams, makes them more aware of avoiding those kinds of situations. I think that's the goal, quite frankly. So if it wasn't spelled out exactly in the legislation, it seems to be so closely tied to the intent that we all know, which is to help protect people from getting scammed and make them better, more effective actors in the economic market. That I can only assume that it will help to it will cover those kinds of things. But again, I'm happy to go talk to the author and the folks that are involved with the commission to make sure that those sort of protections are in place. I think that the general I do think that just in general, ideologically, a lot of folks in government are trying to get their head around this in general. I think they're concerned about a lot of, the energy issue is a big one, right? It's a big one, and we've talked a lot about it. But I think there's also concerns about the use of criminal elements, tax evasion, money laundering, and then
talking about
scams.
U.S. dollar or Bitcoin?
Well, right. I mean, there's. I think the thing is, as you know, right? I mean, we've all been so used to dealing with the dollar, right, for so long. So I think people have their head around that as a mechanism, as a currency. You and I have talked about this. I read a little bit. I mean, I know that there's a philosophical approach that I think undergirds the entire Bitcoin system, the crypto system, that a lot of people in government just haven't gotten their head around. And I think they got some very real concerns. I mean, I think, and of course, every time there's FTX, every time there's something on the micro level, something like what happened in Pico, it just turns people off even further. And that's another barrier that you're struggling up against.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You know this.
Yeah, would you guys say, in your opinion, that the media coverage of Bitcoin has shifted recently from negative to more neutral or positive? I mean, obviously, you had some of the largest institutions on the planet are now talking about the importance of investing in Bitcoin, why to make it part of your retirement. I mean, do you feel that that's shifted, or do you think there's still a decent amount of negative press, maybe warranted or not warranted?
You want to say? I mean, are you talking about local press here in Santa Monica? In my opinion, it's become more neutral, but it also depends on what your news source is and what you're looking at and how you disseminate and break down misinformation. So the way we receive our news now is so different. And so for me, it seems more neutral, but that's just probably based on what my Google search is.
Yeah, so I think that with the ETFs, there's been some narrative shifts happening, but I still think there's quite a bit of misunderstanding, and the concern that you're hearing in terms of money laundering. I think it's really interesting because Bitcoin is a public ledger, so it's amazing how much Bitcoin governments have confiscated, which says a lot about how not good of an idea it is to use Bitcoin for money laundering. You have to be very careful. Privacy is a challenge on Bitcoin. Being perfectly anonymous is a challenge. It's a pseudonymous cryptocurrency. It's not anonymous. So I think there's just misconceptions there. And I think the reality is maybe there is a generational divide here, because younger people are very digitally aware and they operate in the digital world very fluently. And stuff like Bitcoin is going to be the thing that they understand, or cryptocurrencies in general, digital assets. That's going to be the thing that they're going to continue to move toward. And I think a fear of education on this and understanding because of concerns about money laundering or criminal behavior is really going to put politicians at a disservice and the government at a disservice, because they're going to be out of tune with with younger people as they grow up and become adults. And I don't think you want that gap. And I think one other thing, if I can remember what I was going to say about this, is the reality is that money laundering happens all of the time. We just had, I forget which bank it was another one of these major banks, like HSBC, that was recently fined millions of dollars for the type of money laundering that people seem to be concerned about with Bitcoin. And yet we don't see HSBC going out of business. We don't see Wells Fargo going out of business. We don't see any of that happening. So I think that, I think we have to really be honest with these discussions, and politicians have to really see the broader context of all of this, because the reality is that you can't really stop the growth of digital assets. You can only educate people and regulate the worst aspects of the casino that is attracted to it.
It's interesting. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. When the announcement came out that I was going to be doing this, I got a lot of blowback from some folks, including a lot of younger folks who are pretty hip to a lot of things, saying, the whole thing's a scam.
Yeah.
And how could you possibly participate in a conversation on this? So there are people, there are folks out there that are not just sort of institutional players that are trying to protect the status quo, but kind of young folks that actually are pushing up against people like me on other issues that have very strong anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin feelings. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that phenomenon.
I can tie into it why they say that, or what more about the comment. I was only going to say that that's one of the purposes of this Street Fest, right? We have the UCLA, USC student clubs, so they're not doing any scam stuff. We have, organizations from authors to meetups to community groups. Gabe behind us, hey Gabe, No Waste BT Signs, he takes trash and turns it into sustainable signage for Bitcoin events. So, the only thing is one of the things about getting past that is when you come to something like this, you see there's a lot of people doing things that are not scamming, but yet the very small amount of people scamming is what gets credited. So I think, like Margo was saying, if politicians will dig deeper, they'll find very clearly that, okay, if we want to have a real conversation with a constituent, we have to have a real conversation. But simply saying something on the level of the whole thing is a scam, a $1.4 trillion industry with participants all over the world on every continent, it's how do you even start?
I was just going to say too, as somebody who is still in the learning process, and full transparency, we've talked about this, I don't hold Bitcoin. I'm still learning myself, right? So there's a transparency aspect about it that I have found the younger generation are more attracted to, right? There's always a conversation about transparency, especially when it comes to politicians and government. So that's what I find interesting is what is the issue when there's more transparency involved? So I think you should look at data. And so I think I will get you a copy to give to you of the Nakamoto Institute's survey that they did. It was a national-wide survey, and you'll see that it's really, there is a huge generational divide, and younger generations are really into digital assets, cryptocurrency. So I totally get that you're hearing from young people, Gen Z, that are concerned, but the polling suggests that Gen Z actually really likes this stuff. And I think you might be missing the bigger picture, but that's just because the data has not really been readily available. So this is a nonprofit institute that's run by a philosopher at Reed College up in Portland, Oregon, which is also another very super liberal part of the country. So I think you should take a look at their polling and what they've done, because I think that's going to give you a really interesting insight into what people actually think beyond the broad, bigger media narratives.
Ben will read it. I've never shared this with anyone, but I have a photo of him. I won't show it to the camera, holding up the Book of Satoshi, and he did read through the white paper on an airplane, which I would say is much more than many electeds have done. And Ben will read good stuff that's sent to him. I know that for sure.
I was just going to say that from a city perspective, and I don't know how much our city communications appreciated this or not, but given all the news that's out there and everybody loves to share negative news and rarely shares positive news, our Twitter account at the city level had, 97% of it was all positive. There was more positive interaction, and just people coming here today was all positive. So, we can sometimes I know as an elected official, I know you know, you can get a dozen emails and they're all negative and you can feel like, oh my gosh, everybody thinks this way about something. That's usually because all the people who feel as, positive about something aren't necessarily going out and talking about it. But here is a prime example of people coming out
because
to this
there are
event. And some people came from New York that I met today, Canada.
And the scams get huge attention. Yeah.
I know we're going to have a lot of dialogue, but we are coming up on time. I just wanted to say real briefly, this panel is titled, How Can Bitcoin Work in California? And not to say that this is how it would work, but just going down the panel, if there was one area of California that you think, whether it's financial literacy, mining, whatever it is, how could you see a first step being not done, but considered? What area would it be, or what would it look like?
For us, I think job creation and opportunity. I mean, we're looking at trying to reuse spaces in a more innovative way. That's already happening here. And this is one opportunity for that, to bring companies here and to kind of put us on the map and show that we're thinking about it, we're having the conversations, and already it's interested. Tons of folks emailing in about potentially doing business with the city or at least bringing their business here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd love to see some changes in how our electrical grid works here in California. I mean, we have very expensive electricity, and it's, the natural gas, our gas bills here in LA have been high in the past years. So I would love to see what Bitcoin, a change where we could bring in Bitcoin mining to help us on the clean energy side. But actually, what I would love to see is to see how we can bring Bitcoin mining more at the grassroots level. I mean, not Bitcoin mining, sorry, Bitcoin in general, incorporate that into our communities at the grassroots level, and to teach people, especially those who have difficulty getting access to bank accounts. I mean, we have so many undocumented people in Los Angeles. I think providing that kind of financial empowerment for them and making it easy for them to transact and to store value in Bitcoin would be really fantastic, and I think that's lacking. I mean, we see that in other parts of the world, especially in the global south, where people are finding ways to create these circular economies, and I would love to see us empower our local communities, especially our immigrants who come in and do all of the hard work here that we don't want to do. I mean, I think that would be fantastic.
And Ben, okay, doesn't mean that this is how it would happen, but what area do you think would be a good place to kind of what would that look like in California for Bitcoin, for discussion, dialogue, and considerations?
Yeah, I mean, certainly our system is looking for ways to utilize electricity during certain parts of the day, and I think that's going to continue to grow as we electrify. And so this could be one of the mix, especially if it is as flexible as is being described, where it can really be turned on and off and be programmed to be directly responsive to moments of high availability. So that's certainly really intriguing to me. I think, and also, in some respects, it's good when you have situations like this that people have a reason. People kind of feel that they want to attack Bitcoin. They attack it on these environmental grounds. You correctly point out, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of other folks that are out there using a ton of energy too. I mean, it's good to force us to confront the true impact of the data centers, the true impact of AI with regards to energy use as well, almost as a ground truth thing. So I appreciate that as well, because they're going to, as was mentioned, I mean, the amount of electricity use that is envisioned for them is pretty mind-blowing as well. And yeah, they're an important part of our economy, but we've got to figure out a way to let them grow and thrive in a way that doesn't harm our environment. So good discussion. I really appreciate it. I mean, I think you're going to continue to get folks that are just, these kinds of stories of the folks in Pico.
The wall's up and they just don't want to eat.
Right, they're going to continue to get, I think, folks stressed. By the way, what I will say, Tim Grayson did a bill a couple years ago that the governor initially vetoed, that created a licensing system for folks who kind of want to act as Bitcoin brokers. The Bitcoin community initially opposed it, I think for libertarian reasons, which I get. Governor vetoed it. Then, of course, Bankman-Fried happened, and the governor then signed a later version. I guess I would just say to the Bitcoin community, maybe don't they don't always push back on bills like that. I mean, obviously, there may have been some things in there that you would have liked more than others, but I think there's a possible way to welcome certain kinds of anti-fraud protections and some types of licensing to ensure that people are involved in the system who have a mind toward protecting vulnerable people from fraud and other types of abuse. I know there's a strain of thinking within the crypto community that is hardcore libertarian, doesn't want to see any of this kind of regulation or engagement on the part of the government. But I would say for those that are maybe more interested in trying to build relationships with government and the broader regulatory community, be more, try to find a willingness or an openness to common sense anti-fraud protections that protect vulnerable people, and try to see whether you can be part of that conversation. Because I think in the end of the day, the more that is done to protect people from the types of abuse that we've seen, the more openness and willingness there will be to the broader agenda.
Excellent point, and I think everyone finds Bitcoin eventually, right? It's just a matter of when, and I think these conversations definitely open the door for California. So incredible points. I want to thank the panelists. I want to give a huge thanks to Ben Allen for coming to this and speaking on this and having an open mind, because for me, when we talk about what do I see as Bitcoin working in California, it's this right here. It's just open dialogue and being able to have good conversation with intellectual people that care with whatever side they're on. So thank you guys. I want to get a picture in front of this mining desk because I haven't done one all day. And we built this from scratch. And it is, I believe, the world's first 100% renewable mining desk, meaning that the fans don't spin unless the wind is here. So we're good to take a picture. And thank you all so much. And thank you all for tuning in at home to this panel talk. So thank you, Lana, Margot, and Ben. Can we get a picture up front? Yes, okay.
Thanks.
You guys are all right.
So don't say anything
Whose phone is this?
incriminating. That's mine. Why?
Hey, that was a sick panel on freaking California.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this here where it's supposed to be.
Oh, the project.
I assume so. You brought me on here.
All right, y'all. The party continues. I'm going to get closer to the mic because, how about, can y'all at home hear me now? I'm talking into Mag's shoulder. Usually I cry on there. How's the sound, Spencer? Thumbs up on the sound. Are we
Hold
cooking?
this closer to your mouth.
Are we cooking? Okay.
Testing.
Okay, cool. I think we're still streaming, and we wanted to just talk about a special project that we're working on here. And so I guess a good place to start is with the story. You think?
Yeah.
The story? Okay. So in 2009, I got hired with the Santa Monica firefighters, and one of the first assignments I had was working the LA Marathon. And I worked the finish line, and I knew nothing about Bitcoin, and pretty much I was 25. I didn't know anything about anything. Let's be real. And what I didn't know was in that race was Hal Finney, one of the earliest developers of Bitcoin and the recipient of the first Bitcoin transaction. Unfortunately, running in that race, Hal Finney became fatigued, something that he wasn't used to because he was just an awesome marathon runner, and he had to pull out of the race. What he later found out was that he had ALS, and ultimately and sadly, he passed away from ALS. So one of the ideas we had in talking was, how do we memorialize a person who contributed so much to cryptography, had the quote, right, that a computer can be used to liberate and protect people all around the world, not just something to oppress people, and was just an amazing human being that lived his life in such an inspiring way. So we wanted to create a memorial to Hal to potentially place at the finish line, the original finish line of the LA Marathon, in the spirit of, we continue the work of those who came before us. So of course, I had to connect with Brecky. Max helped us connect with Fran, who we ran the idea with, but share with me kind of what the idea is behind this and how people can support.
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Brecky. I'm a local artist and sculptor. Unfortunately, Hal couldn't finish that last marathon, as Dom said, and we think it would be a fitting tribute to Hal if there were a monument to his run, to his life, to his contributions to Bitcoin at the finish line that he was unfortunately never able to cross. Hal was such an amazing human being that after he was diagnosed with ALS and after the symptoms started, causing his quality of life to decline, he continued to work on Bitcoin. It was one of the things that he continued doing almost to the very end. And if you talk to any Bitcoiner, Hal is a legend. Every year on the anniversary of his death, people talk about it. I go through his tweets on that day and I read through them just as sort of an experience. Did you do the same thing?
Yeah, but also I think there's this one tweet of his, which is running Bitcoin, that everyone has retweeted at least once, because I don't know, Twitter has this thing where they deletes our retweets or deletes our likes. So everybody wants to make sure that one stays up and is an existing one, because I think that's we all share a deep fondness for Hal and his contribution. So I think it's very meaningful, this project that Dom has kicked off, and that one of our premier Bitcoin artists, we're talking about, this man carves stone. This isn't like the quick art, the fast art. This is like proof of work type of art.
I love the response. Someone on your Twitter was had some issue with a stone piece that you had done and what people were bidding on it, and you're like, have you ever carved lettering into stone? No. But with I think some of the key things that we wanted to stay true to was staying true to keeping this project about Hal, making sure that Fran Finney is involved in every step of the way, and if at any point she were to feel it wasn't staying true to his vision, then that's more important than the
She
project.
has veto.
Exactly. And for people to get involved, I think one of the things we talked about, placing a monument somewhere is a huge undertaking. What is really inspiring is that a few people in the community that are involved in Parks and Recs have heard of Hal's story and are very supportive. So I think there will come a time to rally community support, but for now, how can people get involved in supporting the very early origins of this monument to Hal Finney?
So what you're gonna do, people, is take out your phones, and we'll share these links later, but you can scan this QR code, and we have a very simple Google form to collect, an email, a name or pseudonym, perhaps an amount you'd be willing to contribute, or or other ways that you might be able to contribute. This is non-binding, so there's nothing that you have to do, but if you'd like to get involved, please consider giving us your info and letting us know how you can help. Just to give a little bit of scope for something like this, if you think about a monument that you've seen, let's say it's a bronze sculpture or a stone sculpture, you not only have to pay for the raw materials, but the time of actually creating it, plus the upkeep, the design plans. There's a lot that goes into it, but we think it's worth it. Hal deserves this, and we'd love for all of you to be a part of this, so that this is not only something that Fran Finney is okay with, and something that Hal would look down on us and say, I approve, but something that the whole community can share their part in as well.
Very cool, and yeah, scan that. You can always email info@proofofworkforce.org. You can get in touch with Brecky through, Twitter or X.
Nostr.
You can get a hold of Max. And our dream is to make this project a reality. I think we have a good shot at doing it, and we'll need a community lift for it. So very cool, and we're just so blessed to have Hal have been a part of Bitcoin and just everything he did in cryptography. So really happy to have you on here, and I know we'll have updates going as we work on this project. So what else? Things are kind of like we're getting to the end of the Bitcoin peer-to-peer. Any thoughts? You want some takeaway? Are you good with that? Spencer's like, I'm good. Spencer,
Pickleball finals are coming soon. Yeah.
Let's show the pleb party. There's a pleb party happening over there at 6 o'clock.
Yes, 5 o'clock actually.
5 o'clock.
And I think the pickleball final match, which will be I think the winner takes home like $1,000 or $2,000 in Bitcoin, is happening now. So
what's
it's probably getting heated over there. Spencer, how'd you get roped into this?
Dude, I have no idea. I guess I have Mike Germano to thank, maybe a little bit of George McHale, but honestly, working in the Bitcoin industry, you run into so many crazy opportunities, and being a part of this is really special. Like Dom, seeing all the work that you do with Proof of Workforce and just like the drive that you have, I'm really optimistic to see, first of all, what you can accomplish, but also what the Santa Monica Bitcoin community can become. I grew up in California, and it kind of makes me sad sometimes where I've kind of seen the energy for Bitcoin move further east. And so to see this happen, I think is really positive, especially, I think after COVID, it really changed a lot of things. So to see this come together and to see so many people participate was really special.
Give it up for Dom, everybody.
Woo! I'm going to take that gratitude and put a mirror up right back to you all, because I will say certainly that this was in no way even fathomably possible without everyone that came together. There's Paige from Outlandish. I mean, like, woo-woo! There's so many people that came together to help. Spencer, I mean, when I brought this idea to Spencer, it was like, well, what? You're going to build a news desk, and how's this going to come together? And just having the faith to see it through and helping, and Brecky, we just talked about this project recently, and coming and setting up Bitcoin is hard. Like I'm overcome, and Mags, which I don't know who brought Mags into our orbit of me and Proof of Workforce.
I brought myself, I'm like, there's a firefighter at the Swan event and he saved somebody. I need to meet more firefighters in Bitcoin.
Can we shout out the Santa Monica Fire Department over there?
Woo!
Look at those mustaches. Woo!
I gotta give it. You all see the one with the hat and the mustache, Garrett?
Which one with the hat and the mustache?
He's spent many hours from his family helping to build this desk, because those 4 people know that I am not a carpenter or a person that's good with tools. And so huge shout out to Garrett, who this would not be possible, but this was built. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this desk.
Proof of work.
For sure. So yeah, I think, again, one of the most overlooked things and why the firefighters kind of got involved in Bitcoin is the power of the Bitcoin community and the network. It is second to none. For those that haven't gotten involved, like, this is a community that, look, Blake's right there. I didn't even hit him up. He just said, I'll be at the event. How can I help? And Bitcoiners are resilient and they will build in any condition. And I'm just really honored to be shoulder to shoulder with you all.
Yeah, Dom, thank you, man. This has been awesome. Shout out Brecky and Mags as well. Everyone else who jumped on, like, this is sick. Also, yeah, dude, this desk, this has got to weigh like 3,000 pounds. Like, this is rock solid.
How are we getting it out of here?
I think, yeah, once everyone shuffles home, we'll be moving this desk, and I look forward to this evening. But yeah, thank you. Thanks to Bitcoin Magazine for covering this. I saw there's a ton of streamers. Outlandish for doing the tech in the background and providing the support through a very long process. So with that, I think we're closing down the news desk unless we got anything else planned.
We should do a Frankie Bitcoin.
I think that's it, unless you got anything else in your sleeve, Tom.
I think that's it. So from 3rd Street Promenade to 1200 block, the first ever Santa Monica Bitcoin peer-to-peer street festival sponsored by the first ever municipal Bitcoin office powered by Proof of Workforce. We are shutting down live, doing it live from the Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade. Thank you, everyone.
Bitcoin!
All right.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Congrats.
Dude.
This is awesome.
Bro.
Oh, yeah. You do your thing. Oh, this one, yes.